That's the fire district.
Yeah. Yeah. I called. Talked to him. That's why
We'll reconvene the meeting of the Higher Ed Interim Committee and turn the agenda over to President Nesset for the board's beginning exercises.
Good morning, Representatives Sanford, and thank you very much. I would like to call to order the February 3rd meeting of the State Board of Higher Education. Christy has taken roll call, so we are in order that way. I'd like to begin with just a couple of comments and really truly say that this is an historic day that we are all working together. And I will continue to say we are working together for the betterment of the students and the young people of North Dakota. That is truly our focus here. This demonstrates a new spirit of collaboration between higher ed and the legislature. We all want what's best for our students and the state of North Dakota. We'll work together to achieve that. Personally, I am committed to know that the whole board is as well. I will say that we have a board together working very well, very collaborative, and for the betterment of the students of North Dakota. This is especially important during a time of tightening budgets and fiscal responsibility. We can't lose sight what's really important, the students and being fiscally responsible. We will find the right balance, and balance is an important thing that we do. Today is the first step. We're in the initial stages of planning the next step, a broader discussion on May 23rd and 24th in Bismarck that we are calling Envision 2030. This will build on the work that we have done so far with the board strategies and the Chancellor's Listening Tour, today's discussion, and the stronger relationships we are forging with business and the legislature to collaboratively shape the future of higher ed in our state. As always, keep in mind, we are doing what is in the best interest of the students. Thank you for being here. I look forward to a productive meeting. Representative?
Thank you very much, President Nesset. A couple of quick points of order. Presenters have asked the question when they get a question, how do they respond? And of course, they don't want to have to say, Mr. Chairman, Representative, whoever asked the question, President Nesset. So what, from a presenter standpoint, just answer the question. Secondly, I believe today is a special day for Representative Overson. Is there an announcement you'd like to make, or? It's your birthday, okay, so. I also would like to thank everybody for coming to this session, making this happen. Appreciate very much the board's willingness to do this and the Chancellor's efforts in bringing it about. I want to start by saying thank you to the Chancellor and the staff. We have been well served by them as a committee. They provide a lot of expertise to us. They're very willing to support us with the documentation we need, and that's been really critical to all of our meetings. So thank you very much to the staff. They've just been wonderful to work with. The idea for this joint meeting came about at our first meeting in Dickinson when there were a couple of board members that were there, and board member Ness was giving us a little comment from the board, and one of his suggestions was we ought to get together once in a while. And since we recognized immediately that superintendents always have good ideas, we said, let's do that. And so we've followed up on that, and thank you very much for that suggestion, Mike. It was a good one. The focus of the agenda today is affordability. It's a big issue. It's probably the most important issue that we have in higher ed today in this country. There are many who suggest that the financing model that we have in higher ed doesn't work. That in fact, what it does is almost leads to inflation because of the way that it is financed. So that's part of the background for this. Affordability is really critical to whatever kind of a financing model that we use. So a first purpose would be of the meeting that both groups get a chance to hear the data. We'll be using this during the legislative session. So it's good to have us talking from the same base, so to speak. And also, obviously, the opportunity to share insights, reactions to the data. So given that, I'm going to stop with that, and we will go right into the agenda. The idea of the first part of the agenda was to look at the beginning piece of what a student or a potential student would go through as they get ready to select an institution and make the applications and this type of thing. So we have with us today a couple of representatives from the university system who will be leading us in this first part of this discussion. And so I will turn it over to Dr. Feldner, and she will introduce the folks that are going to work with us. And so thank you, Lisa, for being here and taking this lead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chair, members of the board and the committee. So Dusty is this on? There we go. Yeah. So to make the presenters even more nervous, we have two mics for them. We have today, we are going to take you through, from the student perspective, what happens as students begin to look at post-secondary education and the process that leads them through each step. So we'll start with how they look for the institutions and their what their interests are, followed by financial aid and so on. And today we have with us Chris Erickson, who's from the system office. He'll lead you through the first part. Then Lori Weber from Minot State will talk about the FAFSA and institutional scholarships and aid available. We'll have three different students' perspectives: low resources student, a student with a medium amount of resources, and then students who have high resources. Followed by Tammy Dolan, who will talk about some of the costs, and then Richard Rothfuss will follow up with student success measures and how our campuses are doing. So with that, thank you very much, and please feel free to ask questions along the way because they're expecting to provide answers to you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Chris Erickson. I'm the communications specialist with North Dakota University system. And this year I worked on ND Choose, which I'm going to speak to you about now. It's the annual outreach effort that...
You have to have
So
this
good.
mic because of the webcast.
All right. I'm Chris Erickson. This year I worked on the ND Choose campaign. It is our annual informational campaign that is a supplemental effort to the campus's respective recruitment efforts every year. And the first publication that goes out, high school students start being aware of North Dakota as their first choice, at least from an official standpoint, in the 8th grade when Design Your Future publication is made available to them. Now, this annual information campaign began in 2002. Back then it was known as Project Vital Link. It's gone through some changes since then, but in 2002 it was put in place by the State Board of Higher Education with the purpose of attracting more high school students to the university system by supplementing those campus efforts. Initially, a publication was sent out that was referred to as the View Book, and that was mailed to high school juniors and seniors. This contained brief introduction to each of the 11 institutions within the system, academic program listings, and facts from each college and university. Those facts kind of revolved around what constituted admissions, estimated costs of enrollment, other academic programs, extracurricular activities, campus lifestyles, things of that nature. This information was later used to create the website Indeed Choose. Two publications are now underway, and the first is in front of you with Design Your Future. That's the 8th grade publication, and the other is the publication called Consider Your Options. That's sent out to sophomores. So they do have separate purposes in mind due to the separate audiences. Consider Your Options is distributed to sophomores, and it provides information to help prepare them for college while encouraging them to consider opportunities right here in the state. Design Your Future is the first look for our high school students before they get there when they get into the 8th grade. It helps prepare them for a successful transition to high school, gives them a brief idea of what paths they should consider just in high school to better prepare themselves for higher education. And this second publication also contains information for parents so that they can begin planning for their children's educational future. This is done in partnership with the Department of Career and Tech Education, the Department of Public Instruction, and the Bank of North Dakota College Planning Center. Both of these publications are also available for free on ndus.edu under Reports and Information. Beyond those two publications, there are a couple of posters and a postcard. I believe many of you may have received the postcard so far. The purpose for the postcard is to go out to juniors and seniors over Christmas break. And that's kind of a reminder at that time that here are your options. If you mail the postcard back into the office, then we can provide further information on any of the schools that the students choose. So if those postcards come back in, they would come back in and I'll get them and enter in the information to a database. And from that database, the students will receive further information on the college or university of their choice. The other two handouts that we have are the posters. One is kind of a simple marketing poster that's similar in design to the Design Your Future cover. And the other is a comprehensive listing of all the academic programs within the 11 colleges and universities. And that gets updated each year. That's sent out specifically to high school counselors so that if students come in wondering what programs are available, they can point it to that. And it is designed in the same way as the slide that you can see now that we have on the website. The program listings correspond to what is known as the Help Me Choose My College tool, which I will walk you through now. When the website comes up, there are multiple options that you can go through. Oh, nice. Very good. No, that's not good. I can make this work. Thank you for informing me that I was in the main tool that we like to point students to is the Help Me Choose My College tool. And so under this, they can go through and browse by programs or by colleges. These listings are updated on a yearly basis, and we reach out to the schools and try and get the most updated information so that we're replicating what they have. Under this tool, students can go through, and if they're interested in something in the ag sciences, they can see what programs are available For instance, agribusiness and applied economics would be available right here at NDSU. Clicking further through that, the student would get an idea of some of the information also available in our Consider Your Options and Design Your Future publications. Basic programs and degrees, average class sizes, student to teacher ratio, much more detailed information within those individual campus pages that we ask our campuses to update, and they're always very, very happy to get us the most updated information. And if they want to go through and search for a program instead of looking through a long list, then they have that option as well. So if a student were interested in power plants, then they may find nothing. But power plant technology brings back Bismarck State College, and all our online programs are noted as available that way as well. Again, it brings up the campus information for each of the students. They can get an idea of what their class sizes will be, what enrollment will take, what admissions process they'll have to go through, deadlines, campus life, videos, testimonials from given students, and information at the bottom on who directly to contact concerning admissions, financial aid, student life, or careers. And we have entered in hundreds of keywords throughout this to try and be as comprehensive as possible so that no matter what students are interested in as far as programs, they will be able to find what they're looking for, whether that's power plant technology, a STEM career, nursing, education, or anything of that nature. So this process begins with campus outreach for us at about October, and that's when we begin the design. By December, most all the editing process is done, and the outreach has really gotten underway with the postcards. And now, by this time, the publications, including the Design Your Future and Consider Your Options, and the posters will be in the hands of students and their high school counselors. That is all I have for this presentation. If there are any questions, I would certainly be happy to answer them now.
Chris? What's your data on how well used this is by the students? What percentage, what rate, what amount of high school students in North Dakota actually access the website? It looks great to me. I hope it's being used.
I believe our ad agency may have those metrics, but I'm not sure if we would be able to break it down based on if the viewer or the end user was a high school student or maybe a parent or someone else. But I think most of that data might be available from individual campus efforts. I think that would come from when you sign up or enroll in school, kind of the data of how did you hear about a program. So maybe it's happening through ND Choose. I'd love to hear that, but I don't have the specific statistics on that today.
All right, thank you.
Other questions for Chris?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Flacco.
Mr. Chairman, Chris, quickly, does it go to public, private, and homeschoolers?
I'm not sure if we have a list of homeschooled students. I know that our list for the postcards does encompass all public high schools in the state, and I believe the private schools that reached back out to us were on the list as well.
Board Member Meliker.
I have a question on, and maybe you answered it earlier, about the initial contact was made in 8th grade,
Yes.
and then how many follow-up, is there a follow-up maybe at 9th grade and then at 11th grade and so on? Or is it just
The Design Your Future publication is sent specifically to the 8th graders, as you said. In 9th grade, we don't have any targeted effort. The Consider Your Options publication is targeted specifically to sophomores, and then the postcard is targeted to juniors and seniors as a reminder that we have these options available. The 9th graders would maybe still have the Design Your Future publication, and they would have access to the high school counselors who have the very detailed academic program matrix. But there is nothing specifically targeting freshmen.
Because I would assume that most students are making their rounds at various colleges where they want to go to college as seniors, or maybe late in their junior year. So is there any advantage of maybe trying to attract freshmen?
I believe there may be, and we can certainly look into adjusting our outreach efforts to have a more specific approach to freshmen.
Further questions? Thank you very much, Chris. Great
Thank you all.
initiative. Yep, thank you. Now we have Lori Weber from Minot State in the Student Financial Aid Office. Welcome.
Good morning. It is quite an honor to be here sharing something with you that I have to tell you is very near and dear to my heart. I have worked closely with the FAFSA since I was a work-study student at Bismarck State College a million years ago, so this is quite an opportunity to talk about the FAFSA. Okay, so to start out, I wanted to define for you what the FAFSA is. It's the free application for federal student aid. It unfortunately has suffered over the years from something that I like to refer to as a bad reputation. When I tell people what I do, often I get groans and sort of this dismayed look, looks of concern about, why would I want to do that? But I have to tell you, over time, having evolved with the FAFSA over the past 25 or so years, the FAFSA has really become a much more streamlined, more simple tool than it was in the past. The advent of online FAFSA, the FAFSA.gov website, enabled the FAFSA to become sort of a dynamic tool. It is responsive to students' answers, so that if you answer certain questions certain ways, you don't have to answer all of the questions. Compared to years ago when every question had to be answered by every student. So in spite of its bad reputation, the FAFSA is a very useful tool that helps students access a multitude of federal and state aid programs, and it is just one form that folks need to fill out to apply for all types of federal aid. It is the single application that includes all the federal programs and the North Dakota State grant. Students do have to reapply every year. It is not a one and done sort of process for students, but every academic year that they wish to apply for federal aid, they must submit a new FAFSA. We generally see the FAFSA become available January 1st for the upcoming academic year. So just on January 1st, 2016, the FAFSA became available for the 2016-17 school year. But we have an exciting change on the horizon in regard to FAFSA timing. Beginning with the 2017-18 FAFSA, the FAFSA will become available on October 1st. So if you can imagine yourself as a senior in high school, that means that you'll be able to submit your federal application for financial aid in the fall of your senior year rather than having to wait until the spring. With that shift comes an opportunity to use what we are referring to in the financial aid world as prior year data. So if anyone has familiarity with having done a FAFSA in the past, typically what happens, which is what is happening this spring, families are in a rush to get their federal taxes filed in the spring so that they can use that tax information to submit the FAFSA for that student for the upcoming school year. For some families, that's a bit of a hardship because of delays in filing their taxes, particularly for self-employed. We see it a lot for farm families that they sometimes have some difficulties there in getting those taxes prepared. But what will happen starting next year is that families will use prior year data. So they will begin using the 2015 tax information for their 17-18 FAFSA application. There won't be that rush because they would have already filed their taxes way back last spring, and they will use that information to apply for financial aid for the following academic year. It's a real shift for us in financial aid to be able to consider offering federal aid packages in a much different time frame rather than waiting until late spring. There will be now an opportunity to move that timeline up closer to the maybe timelines that folks are applying for admission to the university. We are very excited about that. We understand that that will take some effort on the part of schools to accommodate that, and we look forward to the opportunity to communicate with families sooner and hopefully give them better information on an earlier basis. We also look forward to maybe more effective and hopefully earlier timelines in regard to state aid, such as the state grant and North Dakota CTE and academic scholarship information. We really want to incentivize our North Dakota students to stay in the state of North Dakota and hope that this shift to prior year information and earlier timelines will give us an opportunity to be very competitive and to provide complete information to those students as we come forward with aid packages on an earlier time frame than we have in the past. So we look forward to hopefully some changes with those programs as well so that we will have earlier information to share with our North Dakota students, incentivizing them to stay with our schools. I wanted to show you a couple of screens that students see when they go to FAFSA.gov. I realize they're very small, so I apologize for the small print, but just to give you an idea what this looks like from the student's perspective. This is the homepage for FAFSA.gov. You can see the bright green buttons show where students need to go. So if you're a brand new student and you've never done a FAFSA before, you would start with Start a New FAFSA. If you're a returning student and you have previously submitted a FAFSA, there's a button for you called Login. You're a returning user, so you have some information already available in the FAFSA system, and they will be able to identify you and pull up some of the things that don't change about you, like your name and your social security number and your birthday. So it streamlines the process for returning students by not having them fill absolutely everything out. The next page is what you see when you click actually either one of those buttons. It will give them an opportunity then to begin to enter either their personal FSA user ID, which is another new feature of the FAFSA. This year, the FSA user ID became available and replaced something known as the PIN number as the way for students to access the federal student aid websites and federal student aid application. I know that all of us are very concerned about security of information, and that was a part of the federal student aid effort to make social security numbers more secure within their system by not requiring the FSA or the login process for returning users to include social security numbers. So the FSA user ID is something they'll use to either log in, or if they're a brand new student, they will move to the information on the right side of the page to begin entering their information, their personal information, into the FAFSA. Don't fear, I am not going to take you through every page of the FAFSA. Please don't worry about that. What I did want to draw your attention to on the top of this next page is that there are really about 7 sections. You know, if you see across the top, hopefully you can see this. There's student demographics, school selection, dependency status, parent demographics, financial information, signature section, and then confirmation. So it sort of breaks it apart into small pieces to maybe make it a little bit less overwhelming for students. But just wanted to point out the first page is just demographics. You know, people are very nervous about doing the FAFSA, have a lot of concern, and you can see here that it's things like your name, your birthday, your address, things that you will obviously know and will be very simple for students to answer. The next section talks about the school selection. I thought you might be interested to know that students can list up to 10 schools at a time on the FAFSA. So if a family is feeling unsure, so now we're talking about moving the timeline up for applying for federal aid, you know, to October of your senior year. If you're still uncertain at that point, you can list everybody. There's no worry about holding off until you're more sure about your plans. List every school that you're interested in. One of the nice features at this point in the FAFSA is that students can actually click a button at the bottom to say if they want to view some information about a particular school, if they'd like to get to their website, view more details about that, there's an option right within the FAFSA to do that. So that's something that I thought was kind of a convenient tool. The next slide shows a little bit about the parent demographics. What I really wanted to point out on this, I guess, in regard to the FAFSA, is that on the left side, or excuse me, the right side of each screen is this nice piece called Helps and Hints. And it's a dynamic page that allows you to see more information. It allows you to click on a hyperlink. I know that many students struggle with what to do in regard to the parent information, who to provide. Family dynamics are not, just the same as they have been always in the past. So we have lots of family structures and different family dynamics going on. So this page provides a help screen so that families can look at, if my parents are divorced, if my parent is remarried, if we're separated, what do I need to do and who do I need to include? There's a very helpful piece there, as there is on every page of the FAFSA, to help answer those kinds of questions. I wanted to just show you another thing that has happened with FAFSA over the last couple of years is the advent of the IRS data retrieval option. It makes it possible for families to actually opt in to pull information directly from the IRS website. So from your federal tax return, you can pull your adjusted gross income, you can pull your taxes, and a few other pieces of information right from the IRS website, which ensures the accuracy for us and for the family, and makes the whole process a lot simpler. With the move to prior year, this will make that option available to many more families, because almost everyone will have their taxes prepared by the fall of 2016 for the 2015 year. So it makes it a lot more available to most families and most students, and I think it will be, again, a really, really positive move for us going forward. And then the last FAFSA screen that I'll share with you is just the piece that relates to the signature. Everyone who is providing parent and student information is required to provide both a student and a parent signature. And they do that with the use of the FSA user ID, which they have previously created, which belongs to the student. They have their own, and the parent will have their own. They'll provide that information. Simply click sign, and then submit my FAFSA now, and shazam, the process is over. Wasn't that easy? Much easier than you expected, right?
Yeah.
Do you want me to pause for any questions? I wasn't sure.
Are there questions? Yeah.
Just a point of logistics here, Representative. I've been asked by the IT department that, especially our board members and all of us using the microphones, that we actually key our mics and till the red light comes on. This meeting is being streamed live by the Bismarck crew, and they've made that request. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, continue.
Okay. With that, so the student has hit submit on their FAFSA, and now what I'm going to do is to walk you through a couple of different student scenarios and perhaps what they would see both on screen and an example of an award notification that they would get from our institution as a freshman. So our first student we'll call Emma. She's a dependent student, which means she's going to need to provide parent information on the FAFSA. She's 19 years old, a freshman. She herself has an adjusted gross income of about $8,500. Her parents are divorced, but her mother is remarried. And she has lived with her mom and stepdad while in high school. She is going to be using her mom and stepdad's combined adjusted gross income based on the information on the help screen on the FAFSA. She would be using the parent who has provided more than half the support for her over the past year, and her parent's spouse. Their family size is 7 with 3 in college. She's an early applicant. She got her FAFSA filed in March, and her parent, her older parent, is 40 years old. And that has some impact on the FAFSA calculation because they consider in some fashion income or asset protection for people based on their age and how close they might be to retiring. So I thought that is kind of an interesting piece of that. Okay, so what happens after you click submit on the FAFSA is a page like this, a confirmation page pops up, and it congratulates you on submitting your FAFSA successfully to federal student aid, tells them about what will happen next. It provides us a brief snippet of information about the schools that you've provided on your FAFSA. So there you'll see in the middle of the page, Minot State University, along with some statistics about Minot State. In the eligibility information section, it will provide an estimated expected family contribution number, which is not a number that the student actually has to come up with, and it says that, although it does sometimes create some questions for us about that. But it's not a dollar figure that the student needs to come up with, but it is an index that really helps schools determine how much financially the student will be eligible for. More importantly, on the other side of that column, it shows an estimate of their Pell Grant eligibility as well as an estimated federal direct loan figure. So based on what they've provided to us in terms of their income information, family size, all of that, and their estimated grade level, whether they're a freshman or a sophomore or junior or senior, it will give them some idea about what they can expect for federal aid. Not much detail, but there is a hyperlink there, so they can click on Pell Grant, they can click on direct loan, and learn more about those details. So that's the first piece that they see after they submit. The next slide is a copy of an actual paper award letter that would go to a student like Emma at Minot State University. We still send out a paper award notice to our first-time freshmen. So they get this along with a packet of information, including a booklet that looks like this with lots more text and instruction and advice and reminders about dates and things like that. But the award notice gives them basically the details of what is going to be included in their aid package as of that time. It will give them some instruction about what to do if they're going to accept a loan. I know you can't see all of that in that tiny print, but just to give you an idea what's included. Next then, on the screen you can see a little bit more detail about Emma's financial aid package. You can see there that $4,025 Pell Grant, which was initially promised on the confirmation page, and the combined $3,500 in federal direct loan is also part of her package. But she was also fortunate enough to be a recipient of a North Dakota academic scholarship. She's a needy student. She was early on the ball, applied early, was eligible for a North Dakota State grant, was also eligible for a for a federal SEOG grant, a campus-based aid program at our institution. And so there is her total aid package at this time.
So the last two lines on the package, the loan is, there's a subsidized and unsubsidized?
Correct.
Okay. Explain that, please.
Okay. Actually, I think everyone has a piece that looks like this. Some are lime green and some are just white colored, but it's this piece called Do You Need Money for College? On the back side of that is what I call the Cliff Notes about federal student aid programs. It's probably one of my favorite pieces because it gives the bullets, anyway, the Cliff Notes on what all those aid programs are. So if you look under the direct subsidized loan, it explains a little bit about what that is, and direct unsubsidized loan, what that is. The difference between the subsidized and the unsubsidized loans is that the subsidized loan does not accrue any interest for that student as long as they're enrolled at least half time in school and during the 6-month grace period that follows. The unsubsidized loan is not need-based. The student does not have to be needy, and that loan is actually something that would be available to any student who submits a FAFSA regardless of their income. The interest does accrue on that loan from the time that it is dispersed. Interest rate on the subsidized and unsubsidized loans is the same. For this year, for 15-16, it's 4.29%, but the subsidized portion would not accrue any interest while the student is enrolled at least half time. So that's the basic difference. In both cases, the loan can be borrowed by the student without a credit application. They don't need a parent cosigner. It's simply a matter of doing the paperwork, and as long as they maintain academic eligibility and half-time status, they can continue to assume that they would receive both disbursements.
Representative Delmore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a quick, there's a lot of confidential
information that's shared on here. And as I look at page 9, the parent disagrees to share that information. What happens to the student's financial aid if the parent does not want that information shared as far as your income, et cetera? And I know we've asked for that for student loan for a very long time. It's something we had to submit for my son.
Sure.
But what happens if a parent, as this one did, disagrees?
Well, what happens, I'll tell you what happens at my school. When a student comes to me with this, concern that their parents don't want to provide that, I honestly offer them my business card, and I ask them if they would be willing to let me call their parent, or if their parent would be interested in having a conversation with me about this. Parents' information, I guess part of what it is I feel like we have to explain. In order for students to access federal student aid, parents have to provide information so that we can determine the family's overall financial picture. We don't have to like it, we don't have to like the rules or the methodology, right? And we don't make the rules, but that is what is expected by the federal student aid program. So usually what happens is I'll have a conversation with the parent, and unbelievably, I have usually been fairly successful in communicating about the need and really the disadvantage they're putting their child at if they choose not to provide information. Because for the most part, if the parent is unwilling to participate in this, the student will not have access to federal aid. There is one small exception that can be made in cases where the parent has basically said that we are no longer providing support. They have to be willing to sign something that says they don't, and really they cannot be providing even health insurance to that person. There is an opportunity for us to make an exception to be able to offer just an unsubsidized loan, but it's really been my experience that we've never had a student whose parent wouldn't. Now that doesn't mean that everybody comes and talks to me, and I realize that. But for the most part, if I can have a conversation with the parent about what the situation is, we're not turning this information over to the world. The student is, just simply wanting to access federal aid, and they're a part of that process. So.
The question that I would have if circumstances change, you get something like this early on, and circumstances change in terms of additional assistance or whatever it might be.
Okay.
Do you then, the numbers change then to that?
Right, yes,
Okay.
that absolutely does happen. In fact, probably when this freshman award notice would be issued, we may not have had all the information. We might not have known, for example, about the North Dakota Academic Scholarship at the beginning. If we were putting this package together in April, that information wouldn't be available to us until some later stage. So there is sort of a process of revision that happens as additional information comes in. If a student stacks up a whole bunch of external scholarships, that may eat up their need or meet their need, which could change their eligibility from subsidized loans to unsubsidized loans, or might reduce the amount of total loan eligibility as time goes on. So yes, it is fluid. An award offer is made early in the season, if you will, and it can change as time goes on. One other thing I wanted to add about that, with the move to prior year information, particularly as we see changes in income, and I think we'll see that in Western North Dakota more maybe in this coming year than we have in the past. Students do have the ability to file what's called an unusual circumstance appeal with the institution to have us take a specific look at what has happened to their family. Maybe our income was this in 2015, but now here's where we are, and we can collect documentation to try to get a more accurate picture of where they're currently at, which will sometimes change their eligibility in a positive way.
Hey, thank you. I want to just note that was a question that I got from a parent in Western North Dakota whose student had this, made plans, things changed, and when it came to the first day of school, some part of this went away, and so that, golly, what happened here? But what you're telling me is that's routine, that's normal, and it'll happen at every institution. So
it is, and
yeah,
we do
okay, thank you.
we do try to make an effort, and I know every institution does, to continue to solicit that information from families. We say multiple times in multiple ways, if there is information that you know about, if there are scholarships that you're getting that we haven't included let us know about that as soon as possible so that we can make those changes to make the student aware as early as we can about what might change in their package.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Milliker.
Milliker.
Yeah, so, yeah.
I have a question about the amount of state scholarships that are listed when you would track through, let's say, Minot State University. Is there any way to list the amount of possible scholarships that could be available at through their foundation or through the university or through other areas in Minot to attract that student to go to school there, for example? I noticed on the list, a lot of the scholarships that were listed were national scholarships.
Is the question, is there a way to list them on the award notification?
Well, on the letter, let's see, which was that? That was the one where they had received information from Minot, just on this example. And it listed the Pell Grants, the North Dakota academic scholarships, North Dakota State grants. But we have some more scholarships that are possibly available, right? Through the local foundations of those universities and colleges.
Right.
And maybe through the city or through, like in Williston's case, the county issue. Will those things come up on this letter, or is there a way that information could be could be got to students?
If a student has actually been, so this is an actual award package. If the student is awarded an external scholarship, say from a foundation in Williston, when we know about that information, it will be added to this list. It will definitely be part of that. Depending on when the student is notified or notifies us, it will be added when we become aware of that. On the next slide, you'll see, for example, in my next student scenario, there is a Whitkey Scholarship, which is a music foundation scholarship at Minot State University. So if they're awarded a scholarship from our institution, it will be part of that initial package as well. And there's a separate application, just a Minot State General Scholarship application that students fill out to apply for Minot State Foundation scholarships. So we're sort of in the midst of that process right now. Our application deadline is coming up on February 16th. And if they're awarded one of those scholarships from Minot State University, it will be part of that initial package information that they receive. We promote that in a number of ways through our marketing office, and our enrollment services folks get out there and communicate that information to new admits in many different ways. But it's a separate application process for the foundation scholarships, but it will be included in their total financial aid package if it comes from us as an institution right off the bat. If they're getting an external scholarship from some other source, that will make part of the package when we know about it as soon as the student communicates it.
Okay.
Representative Munson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have maybe a couple questions. I'll try to wrap into one. I'm thinking of the downturn in the western part of the state and the oil business. What effect does that have on somebody who maybe has been working in the oil field for a couple of years, maybe out of school for a number of years, even possibly married, so has no parents involved? Are they eligible to use this FAFSA, and maybe they've even got a couple of years of college behind them? So, what would all of those situations entail, and how would that tie into the FAFSA?
That's a very good question, and actually something that I think we'll really begin to see in our area particularly. This kind of goes back to the question that Chairman Sanford asked. Students, every student, married, single, whomever, is eligible to submit the FAFSA. In the example that you gave, that student would need to, or potential student would need to use their income. For example, if they were applying for aid for this upcoming school year for 16-17, they would need to use their 2015 federal tax return, which may misrepresent where they are at today. Their next move then would be to contact the institution to say, I've got this unusual circumstance, what can I do? And then we would begin to collect some documentation. Every school, I think, in our state has a mechanism, an unusual circumstance or a special circumstance appeal form that that student can then use to provide information. We would collect things like information about what they've been earning since then. You know, are they working at all? Are they collecting unemployment compensation, how much, and what do you anticipate the rest of this year to look like, so that we could sort of forecast, if you will, what 2016 will be like, and use our professional judgment to make a change to that student's FAFSA based on their current set of circumstances to reevaluate their eligibility. So sometimes it's enough to make a difference, and sometimes nothing will change, but we have that option.
Board Member Tufte.
Lori, could you provide a little background on this prior per year and what that will do for students who apply for need-based scholarships?
So the question is a little bit of background on prior year?
Will that be advantageous to the students who would really be eligible for those need-based scholarships and the use of prior year data?
So how the use of prior year can impact need-based scholarships. If the institution uses the FAFSA as the means for determining need, which I think many do, and we would be in that category as well, the ability for students to file their FAFSA earlier, I think, will certainly be advantageous because it will give a more complete picture for institutions earlier in the process, so that we will have a better idea about the eligibility for need-based types of institutional aid. One thing that occurs to me with the move to prior year, if you think about it from a high school standpoint, I think they will be using information from that senior, that high school student's sophomore/junior year of existence. And more students, I think, may find that they are more eligible for aid because usually sophomore juniors are probably working less than junior seniors. If you can kind of think about that, their income as a student, as a dependent, will be less for their first year of application for federal aid. So I'm curious to see if that impacts us, because in our area, wages have been higher in the past, and I think that we are seeing fewer Pell eligible students at our institution. I think the move to prior year might have some impact on that because the student income, their income themselves will be less. But I do think that this will be a positive move for schools that use the FAFSA results as a way to determine need for institutional scholarships. Certainly for us, it will be. I know that we're running out of time, and I'm cognizant of that. Do you want me to continue to go through the other scenarios, or?
Quickly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so our next student then is Robbie. Robbie is also a dependent student, 18 years old, as a freshman. Did not file a tax return, reported no income from work. Parents are married with a $77,530 adjusted gross income. Family size of 4 with 1 in college. Mom is 45 years old. Robbie plays the trombone, and he is a music scholarship recipient. Just wanted to point out on this next page, the confirmation page, you can see 4 institutions listed. So you can see there again, Robbie's listed a number of institutions, and some stats show up about that. In the financial aid information on the confirmation page, Robbie's been made aware only of the direct loan option. You'll see there is no Pell Grant indication because of his result. There's again a screenshot of the award notification. And just to sort of pop out that information on Robbie's award, he has an institutional scholarship, a Whitkey Music Scholarship, a federal work study award, a subsidized and an unsubsidized loan, but again, the total of those two will only come to $5,500 as mentioned on the confirmation page, because Robbie is a freshman. So the limit on federal direct loan eligibility for a freshman is $5,500. Based on his need and the other aid that he's receiving, he's getting a combination of subsidized and unsubsidized aid. Okay. I'll move on then to the last student, Preston, who is a dependent student as well, an 18-year-old freshman. He himself has an adjusted gross income of $1,244 and reported some assets. The prior student situations did not report any assets, and I believe it was because they weren't asked to. Because of the dynamic questioning on the FAFSA, if your income falls below a certain level, you may not be asked to provide any asset information. But in this case, the asset information was provided. The parent adjusted gross income is significantly higher here, about $140,000. Family size of 5 with 2 in college. The older parent is 49 years old, and Preston was a recipient of an MSU alumni scholarship. Again, you can see his information on the screenshot is very much the same, shows that the college is listed, only indicates the $5,500 of loan eligibility. And there you can see then the list of aid pieces offered to Preston, including that just the federal direct unsubsidized loan. Because the family contribution number was significantly higher, he was not eligible for any kind of a subsidized loan or work study at our institution. The very last thing then that I just wanted to mention to you was just again to highlight the aid programs that students are applying for, which you have on this nice little Cliff Note sheet. The federal Pell Grant, the largest federal grant program, federal direct loans, which includes subsidized and unsubsidized aid, or unsubsidized loans as we've talked about, as well as the campus-based aid programs, including the Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant, the Federal Work Study Program, which I'm a personal very big fan of, because I was a federal work study recipient in the financial aid office at Bismarck State College, and then of course the Federal Perkins Loan, which is set to discontinue in 2017.
Question related to the amount that would come to the campus then. What is that based on?
The estimated family contribution number.
Okay, so everybody that ends up there, that will impact with the amount of money that's going to come there and,
Right.
okay.
Yep, the federal methodology that goes into the FAFSA, it's a very, giant formula and has a lot of moving parts to it. And if you're really interested, if you Google EFC formula, you'll get the details, probably more than you ever really want to know about that process. But that formula crunches the numbers and all of the data that the family provides to provide us that EFC, that expected family contribution number. That then determines whether the student qualifies for Pell Grants or campus-based aid or subsidized or unsubsidized loans. The cost factor at your institution also has an impact on whether the student is getting a subsidized loan or an unsubsidized loan, but the family contribution number is really the key for us in determining what types of aid we'll be able to offer the student.
Thank you very much. This was foundational, certainly a new experience for me, and well done. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Mr. Chancellor.
Mr. Chairman, just wanted to follow up on Representative Munson's question about oil patch. We're very focused on that, and you can see the state, the legislature is very generous on scholarships, but we've added our Bucket initiative to help communicate to oil workers that we value them and we want them to get integrated in this. And first scholarship was offered by the Petroleum Council. We had 30 applications. We set up a committee, highly qualified, and they fit exactly the profile you were talking about. Former college kids left, a rational choice to make $100,000, and then going back. The first recipient was chosen, is one Dickinson State. Did your profile, married, 3 children, wants to stay in Dickinson, Native American. So we're using that as a communication strategy, and the feedback we got is they saw that they were valued, we want them to stay, and then once they get there, they can look at page after page, all of things that might apply to them. So we are responsive to that, and we're hoping to continue that program. And we now have up to 4 of the 5 Western campuses. Their foundations are all leaning forward to give scholarships, and I know Dr. Nadolny will roll something out in a couple days from the generous donors up in Williston. So we are trying to be responsive to exactly the issues you talked about.
We'll continue with the next item on the agenda. Presenting will be Tammy Dolan.
Good morning. Good morning. So my part in this presentation, now that you've heard about how a student applies to a school and how they can go through that process, they've completed the FAFSA and know what federal aid and loans and things they would be available for. I'm going to go through our affordability report very quickly, and we'll talk about some of the costs that are incurred, and then I'm going to go into the state programs that are appropriated and available to all the students throughout the state. So the first thing I want to refer you to is in your handouts. You have a report that looks like this, and it's hot off the presses. The 2014-15 Student Affordability Report just became available. I think we have it on our website now as of today. And what that is a comparison of all the annual, it's a summary and comparison of all the annual costs and statistics related to a number of items. The first couple of items are the tuition fees and room and board costs, and those are the items I'm going to go into some more detail with on you right now. The report also includes information on federal funding sources, some net prices, and a few other things. I'll just breeze through those, but I'll focus on the tuition and fees and room and board comparisons that you've asked me to cover today. So first, if you look at page 2, page 1 of the report is just some bullets to summarize everything that's in the report. Page 2, and then to coordinate with that, we've got an appendix in the back on pages 13 and 14 that have the detail information. But page 2 has the table 1 on there, compares the tuition, mandatory fees, and room and board for our institutions to the regional average. And as you'll see on that report, if you look at the 15-16 line, at all of our research institutions and four-year campuses, they're all lower than our regional counterparts. The two-year campuses, and this has been true in the past, the two-year campuses are slightly above their regional counterparts for cost. If you look back on Appendix 1, which is on page 13, that'll give you all the detail by our campuses, and it'll also show you the states that we're including in our regional comparison. Those states are the WICHE states, so part of the Western Compact, and we've also included making sure we've included the contiguous states. We did exclude California, Hawaii, and Alaska because those are kind of outliers to our rates. These are rates that were discussed and approved by the board and the presidents, and they are used throughout our strategic plan for comparison purposes. I can just go through each one of those categories. If you look at our doctoral universities for 15-16, our average tuition and mandatory fees rate is about $7,900. The regional average is $8,753. And then the Master's University, which is Minot State, the other four-year colleges, all of those follow similar patterns. And then the two-year colleges, our average is $4,411, where the regional average is $3,736.
Representative Striley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tammy, was there any discussion of throwing the high and low out? Because, having Washington in here really is skewing this.
Mr. Chairman, throwing out formality here, to just answer your question as requested earlier. I was not a part of the discussion. This was done, I think it was a year or two ago where these were set by the board. So I'm not sure if that was discussed. But we wanted to include, all of the comparable states. So I can't answer your question directly as to whether that was discussed or not. But that is probably why California, Hawaii, and Alaska were excluded, because they would have thrown off the averages and aren't as comparable to the other states.
Mr. Chairman, your left.
Senator Flacco.
Mr. Chairman, and to follow up on Representative Straley's comments, and we had this in the last interim, because I do think the data is flawed, because those really aren't often our regional comparatives. I mean, on a day like today, many of us would rather enjoy the weather of Nevada than 10-degree high weather here in Fargo. But I think when we looked at the data last time, they listed the 29 top campuses where students go to, and by the time you got down to 29, there were very few students going outside the state of North Dakota. And I think it would be better if we had real comparisons that reflect where the students actually go, because when we look at what is the genesis of this, it's to compare where other students may actually go to in terms of our competition. And I think there are better ways to do that, and looking at where they actually go to, what states do they actually go to, which would be largely Minnesota, South Dakota, Montana, and probably Nebraska, at least according to the data. A few outliers here or there, but I mean, New Mexico, I'm guessing the answer is less than 10. So I don't know that that should be included in a weighted analysis of our peers.
That is something we can certainly talk about for future reports and for future statistics. We'll definitely take that under consideration.
And Senator Flacco is right. He had brought that up before, and that's his story, and he's sticking to it, so.
Got it. So the next slide here talks about, it does a similar comparison that I just went through, but looks at room and board rates comparing to those same states. There's similar findings at our research and four-year campuses. Those rates are significantly lower than our regional counterparts, and the two-year campuses are higher. So if there's no questions on the tuition and rates or room and board rates, I would go right into the student financial assistance programs if you're ready for that.
I think maybe what we'll do is we'll take a 5-minute break and then return.
Give us more than 3 hours.
We'll move to the agenda item related to student assistance in the form of grants and scholarships. Tammy, please continue.
Okay, so in the current biennium, for the 2015-17 appropriation, this is general fund appropriation for student financial assistance programs in total is $49.6 million. There's several categories. We'll go through each one in a second. We've got a state grants program, which is needs-based. There's a scholars program and an academic and CT scholarships, both of which are merit scholarships. We'll talk about the Indian Scholarship Program, PSEP, and then our education incentive programs. And the first program we'll talk about is the North Dakota State Grant. The current appropriation is $25.6 million. There was some carryover. In some of these scholarships, we've been allowed to carry forward any unexpended money to the next biennium in order to pay for the next biennium's costs. So some of them do have some carryover. So currently available, this biennium is about $29.6 million. This is a needs-based scholarship. So the FAFSA, after the FAFSA process that Lori explained, they'll look at the need that's left, that's uncovered. And based on that need level, these grants are awarded to the neediest students. The grants can be $975 a semester or $650 a quarter. On average, we award between 7,200 to 7,500 awards each year. The students would be eligible for a maximum of 8 full-time semesters of awards. And for to continue to be eligible, the student has to first, of course, still have the need. They have to still fill out that FAFSA every year. We look at it and it's reevaluated for need. And then they have to maintain adequate academic progress at their institution in order to be eligible for ongoing awards. And for this grant now, you must be a North Dakota graduate. That was one thing that was changed last session, that you have to graduate from a North Dakota school. Next is the North Dakota Scholars Program.
Tammy, excuse me before you continue. I have a question related to that. And you probably isn't a good answer to this, but the carryover, is that does that come about because of the timing of the FAFSA that we just heard about? That there's it's late in the game. You've made decisions because you.
I don't think that it's because necessarily the timing of FAFSA. I suppose that could play somewhat into it. And Brenda Zastapol is our Director of Financial Aid, so if it gets too detailed of questions, I'll probably have her step up and answer that. But I think the reason there's carryover is it just depends on the number of eligible applicants. So each year, we get all the FAFSAs from all the students and look at the need, and they'll award those based on the need criteria. And they have to be North Dakota graduates. That impacts it because some of the students, that was a new change, so that's impacting the amount of carryover we would have. But it's really just a product of how many students are eligible and for what amounts. So as they get additional scholarships maybe, or if they get other aid, that offsets the need that they have, and then they don't qualify for as much of a state grant.
We may have more qualifiers given what's going on in the economy. So
Absolutely, we might.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, so for the North Dakota Scholars Program, there's $2.1 million. They had a little bit of carryover from the prior biennium, so it's about 2.3 is available right now. These are full tuition scholarships that are awarded to the top-ranked North Dakota graduates in this state, and it's all based on their ACT scores. And students, the students that are awarded or offered the scholarships are usually in the 95th percentile of all the students taking the test. There's about 45, 50 new awards that are given each year. These students can get that award for 8 full-time semesters or 12 quarters, or until they attain their bachelor's degree. So this is just for the bachelor's degree, but it is a full tuition scholarship to a North Dakota school. To maintain ongoing eligibility, they have to have a 3.5 GPA and keep enrolling on a full-time basis at the school. So these are the top students in the state that we're trying to keep and maintain within our state. A second merit-based scholarship is the North Dakota Academic and CTE Scholarship. The general fund appropriation for that is $14 million. There was approximately $3 million in carryover from the prior biennium, so we have $17 million to work with this biennium. These students, there's a whole host of eligibility requirements that are laid out in statute that they must meet in order to achieve the eligibility. It involves ACT scores and different curriculum, different courses they must take. They can also qualify by taking the work keys test, and those are all statutory. So if they meet all of those, a qualifying graduate from a North Dakota school would be eligible for $750 a semester or quarter. It's also can be distributed on a quarter basis, and their lifetime cap is $6,000. And as long as they stay in school, take 15 credits per semester, and maintain at least a 2.75 GPA, they would continue to be eligible to receive this award. And there's about 1,400 to 1,500 new freshmen that are eligible each year. And I forgot to tell you, there's also another packet in your handout that gives you additional information on each one of these programs that I'm going through, and also includes a historical funding level for each one of the programs.
Board Member Meliker.
Tammy, I have a question on the amount of money that's given, like the state grants, for example, where it's $650 per quarter. Is that set by statute for each one of these, or is that set by the university system or by another organization?
That is set in statute, I believe, Brenda? He wants to know if the rates are set in statute, the per quarter and per. Okay. So they are statutory.
So with some of these with large amount of carryover, it would take legislative action then to increase the amount of grant that would be given per quarter, for example.
That's correct.
Okay.
Senator Flacco.
Mr. Chairman, and to the previous question, in statute is a higher level. I believe it's $1,000 that they can go up to that amount in terms of what's in the law, and then the board, at the advice of the system office, then determines how much they'll actually give out, because clearly you can give more of them at $650 than at $850. So but we've set the upper limit as far as my memory serves me.
Representative Striley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I guess my question, for the system office, probably don't know it offhand, but if we could get what is the number we're doing for the grant? I mean, it says up to $975 per semester. Are you doing 800, 925, or what's the actual award amount? Because if you need to, I think 4 million carryover is too much, personally. So if we're not at the cap, we need to look at raising that to get this money in the hands of the students.
I'm going to ask Brenda to answer that question.
Thank you for the question. Brenda Zastapol with the North Dakota University System Financial Aid Office. This last session, the rate for the state grant was set in statute. It's at $975 maximum for a semester, $650 is for the quarter schools, and that amount can be adjusted down to account for unmet need. It can also be provided to part-time students. So the state grant is not only for full-time students, three-quarter, half-time, and quarter-time students can also receive a state grant at a prorated amount. As far as the carryover goes, the academic and CTE had been set at $10 million initially as it came into existence 5 years ago, 6 years ago? 5 years ago. 2009. And so that amount, we've slowly been building up the base of students. And currently we are taking in around, as Tammy had indicated, around 1,400 students per year, new freshmen. We see attrition, and we're seeing our first expired cohort here where they've completed the 6 years following high school graduation. So the Department of Public Instruction also has done a wonderful job of promoting this at the high schools. And this year we actually saw our largest group of 1,700 students. So we feel that the average that has been around 1,400 will continue to increase. So for the academic and CTE, the carryover is probably pretty much in line with where we need to be to see us through this biennium. As far as the North Dakota State grant goes, it is a need-based grant, and there are, as Tammy indicated, several issues with the FAFSA that students may not qualify based on need. Outside scholarships coming into play where they may be awarded the state grant, and then that has been reduced or eliminated as those other scholarships come into play. So that's one of the issues with students not qualifying. Also, for the last legislative session here, the CTS group up in Grand Forks provided data to us for the full year. If we looked at possible students who could qualify for the state grant based on need, it was around 8,500 maximum. And prior to my coming on, I know that awards were made pretty much prior to the academic year starting, and then no additional awards would be made following the start of the academic year. We've changed that process, and we currently are still awarding for this academic year. So after we get the disbursements out for spring, we'll see how much funding we have remaining for the biennium to see if we can make additional awards. So we're in a very good situation where many states aren't, where we're able to still tap into some funding and utilize that additional, obviously the carryover plus the increase that the legislature provided us last session. So yes, I would say that the carryover for a couple of years was definitely high, mainly probably due to the awarding practices that were in place, stopping those awards as of the academic year starting, which we've continued to award now.
So who makes the decision then on what student A, B, and C get, or do they just all get the same amount?
Okay, so if a student comes in, they fill out their FAFSA today, and they have at least, we set the limits by school type. So we have our doctoral schools, we have the four-year public, we have private, we also have public two-year, and the tribal institutions. There's a limit that we set for what's called the cost of attendance. So we get very limited data into our office from the FAFSA. We get that EFC number and that we have to make a determination on. And as an example, I don't have the exact numbers with me, but let's say at Minot State, that threshold is 17,000. Anybody with an EFC over 17,000 would not be considered. Anybody under 17,000, so $16,999, would be awarded a $975 grant. That student name then is forwarded to Minot State to evaluate that student for eligibility. And that student can qualify from anywhere from $1 up to $975 based on the cost of attendance that's actually at that school. We set these thresholds by school type so that we have all of these schools within a certain tier on a level playing field. That answer that?
Thank you. Board Member Murphy.
So I'm a bit confused. So are these grants or are they scholarships?
These are grants.
There's a difference. And it's labeled scholarships, which are not need-based. These are grants, which are need-based, correct?
There are two types. Within the state of North Dakota, we have the North Dakota State Grant. That's need-based, and that's based off of the FAFSA, the North Dakota Academic Scholarship, and the North Dakota CTE Scholarship, as well as the North Dakota Scholars. Those are based off of merit, and those are earned in high school based off of their criteria there. Those are scholarships.
So they have nothing to do with the FAFSA?
Those two do not, no.
Thank you.
The only other one that, well, we also administer, I should say, the North Dakota Indian Scholarship, which has two different awarding methods. One is based on merit, but the one that is based on unmet need would require the FAFSA and to show unmet need.
Thank you.
Representative Munson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The carryover that you've been having is rather large, but going forward, if we are not able to put the kind of money into the program that we have been putting in, we sort of have a contract with these students that have already started this program. So is that where we're going to maybe have to fulfill those, is through the carryover?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee and the board, yes. I mean, we'll have to look at that. And when we put our budget together, each biennium, we look at all the estimated availability of carryover and the appropriations, and we will analyze that. But yes, we will use that carryover as long as, we need to. And then our next budget request, we would have analyzed that to tell you if we have enough or too much, or we need additional funding.
For committee members and board members, maybe a potential discussion item. From a legislative standpoint, when you look at the issue of the tuition, the FAFSA, federal assistance, state assistance, there's an appropriation for the state assistance. And one of the things that legislators gnash their teeth about is the fact that tuition goes up and we can't keep up with the grants or the scholarships that are being awarded. And we look at what's happening with the federal circumstance, and are they going to be able to raise significantly when you do the FAFSA application? So there's a significant relationship here from our standpoint as legislators in terms of what do we carry forward what do we look to, should we be doing? It ties back to that tuition issue or that. So maybe we can come back to that later and discuss that. But there's definitely these pieces interact and they do impact the decision that we try to make legislatively when we appropriate for the merit. For example, this last time we made the commitment to increase the needs-based. That was where the issue was. We didn't neglect the merit completely. We took the money that had been in the merit and that was added into the challenge grant. And there was, as you may recall, the first, $2 million or something like that in the challenge grant had to be scholarships. So we tried to make up in that particular way. But so we'll get back to that later, but I want you to be thinking about that because it is the relationship is there and drives what we try to do legislatively ultimately. Okay, Tammy?
Okay. Thanks, Brenda. So the next scholarship, Brenda mentioned this, there's a North Dakota Indian Scholarship. It's about just about $650,000 from the general fund. It can be either merit or needs-based. And there is a committee that works on that. They can get up to $1,300 per academic year if they're undergraduate, and $1,940 for graduate students. We give out about 240 undergraduate awards and about 30 graduate awards each year. And for the merit awards, they have to maintain a GPA of 3.5. Next program I'd like to talk about is PSEP, or the Professional Student Exchange Program. There is $3.8 million available from the general fund in an appropriation, a little bit of carryover from the prior biennium, about $500,000. In addition to that, that's not general fund and isn't on this slide, there is a little bit of money, $467,000, that comes from the Student Loan Trust Fund that helps fund this program as well. This program is a way for North Dakota to secure admission for some of this, for students that are going into various professional programs that aren't available in our state. So some of the examples are veterinary medicine, dentistry, optometry. Those are the programs where we don't have those in our state, so we fund and provide some funding to those schools to secure a slot for a student that qualifies and meets all the required criteria to participate in their programs. It doesn't fully fund the tuition of those programs by any means, but it's just a way to secure some slots for students. There are, at the various schools, we've got veterinary medicine at University of Minnesota, Iowa State, some of the witchy states, and then Kansas State. There are veterinary medicine programs there. Dentistry is at Minnesota and the witchy schools. But there's about 12 new slots each year in veterinary medicine spread amongst the various programs, 8 in optometry that are available, and 7 in dentistry. The last state-funded.
Senator Nelson has a question.
Yes, Tammy, logistically, does the state board or somebody have to issue 990s to people who are recipients of all of these awards and grants, or does the money go directly to the institution, or how is the institution?
I believe that the money goes directly to the institution. I can look to Brenda to confirm that.
The 1098Ts are issued by the institutions on an annual basis for all scholarships and grants that the students receive, whether they're internal, external scholarships, or state scholarships and grants. Those are issued by the schools individually.
So the last funded program is called Education Incentive, and there's 3 different components made up in this $3.3 million appropriation. About $130,000 per biennium goes to NDSU and UND for their doctoral programs to support those. And then there are 2 student loan forgiveness programs. One is for teachers, and the other is for STEM occupations. And each one has a little different criteria. There are an application process that goes on each year for these programs, separate application progress. For the teachers, the eligible grade levels and content areas that are eligible for this program are determined by DPI each year. So they tell us which areas have a shortage. And then the students will apply, or the teachers will apply for student loan forgiveness. If they are eligible and awarded, they can get up to $1,000 per year for a maximum of 3 years. We give out about 405 awards each year, and we have a significant number of applicants compared to the number of students that can be awarded with the funding. So there's more eligible people than we have funding for. We award about 78% of the eligible applicants in total, including all new and returning applicants. And we can award about 50 to 60% of the new applicants that come in each year for teacher loan forgiveness. In the STEM occupation program, that is $1,500 a year for 4 years. We give out about 760 awards each year. And of the eligible applicants, it varies from year to year depending on the number of applicants. But it's gone anywhere from 65 to 80% of those applicants can be awarded. For new applicants, again, depending on how many come in, we can range from we've awarded 25% of the new applicants that are eligible to 60%. It just depends on the number of applicants that come in each year.
Representative Munson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tammy, when you're talking about these loan repayments or forgiveness, is that for any loan, or is that just Bank of North Dakota loans, or is that any kind of loan that they might have that they can show is for higher ed?
Right, for any student loan. So that's a summary of all the state-funded programs that are out there. You had asked to talk a little bit about student loan programs. We don't offer any loan programs from the system office, but the Bank of North Dakota does have the deal loan that they offer, and Shirley Glass is here too, in case we have any more detailed questions from the bank. But the deal loan is offered to students that are attending a North Dakota college, or they're a North Dakota student that's attending out of state. So they're available to North Dakota students. It can be either a fixed rate or a variable rate, and they can get up to $50,000 in total. There's also a Deal 1 consolidation program. So once students have completed and they have these student loans, they can go to the bank and consolidate, again, for a lower rate, either fixed or variable, and they have to have been a resident of North Dakota for 6 months. And there is, in your handouts, a sheet that has a blue table on the front and on the back that has all of the details of those programs that are available.
Board Member Morton.
I'd just like to comment on that deal consolidation. That is tremendous. We've hired 175 young people since July at Microsoft, young in career, and this is a big selling point. We did not even realize what's going on. They discovered this themselves. So keep up. That is great, Bank of North Dakota. Thank you.
Yes, it is, and my daughter has done the same thing, and I say thank you to the bank as well. Helps her. The bank also has a couple of grant programs dealing with saving for college and preparing from a very young age to pay for college. There's a college savings plan that they administer. They offer a match, so for up to 3 years you can get $300 for contributions. They're matched from the bank. There's some income requirements that need to be met, and again, there's a handout on that program. BND, since 2007, has provided $1.7 million in matching funds to people who are saving in this College Save loan program. And the other program they have is called Children First, and that again is a contribution matching program for North Dakota newborns, and they can get a $200 match for newborn North Dakotans that are a year or younger. There's no income requirements to achieve that, to get that match, and they've given out, since 2011, they've given out $326,000 to these newborn North Dakotans who are starting accounts to save for college. You'd also asked about institutional
Board
scholarships.
Member Meliker.
I have a question on the amount of information that you presented, Tammy. Is there any way that prospective students can get this when they are looking at our colleges and universities early on? Like, for example, when they're a freshman in high school or an eighth grader, or is there a way that them and their families will have this information easily accessible like it is here?
If there isn't already on the North Dakota Choose website, we definitely should be getting that to them. So I will make sure that we are, because yes, they should know about all of these programs. And I do know For the academic and CTE program especially, there's an education through the schools. They are educated on how to achieve that scholarship early on so that they can make a plan for their high school years, if that's what they're shooting for, CTE or the academic one, so they can plan their coursework. And they know what test scores they need in order to achieve it. I know that specifically is out there for that program, but the others we can certainly make available, and we should.
Well, for students and families looking at affordability, which we all are concerned about, it would seem to me that more of this information that they have in an easy, quick way of reviewing it would make some sense.
I completely agree. Okay, so I'll go on to the next item, which is institutional scholarships. Now, Lori already explained to you how the campuses, the process they go through, and they look at the FAFSA and the need and all the different eligibility for different scholarship programs. This slide just summarizes the amounts that are available at each institution. There are, as you can see, in total over the last 3 academic years, there's been approximately $20 million throughout the whole, all of the institutions that's awarded in institutional scholarships. The amounts vary dramatically depending on which institution you're at. They have increased in the last couple of years at some of the institutions, and that part could be in part due to the Challenge Grant, where they've been establishing new scholarships, and there's that matching matching ability from the state. So you can see that it ranges from a high of, like at UND, they have $8 to $9 million that's awarded each year in its various institutional scholarships. To 500,000 or a couple 100,000, but at each institution it makes a huge impact on each student, and their ability to afford college is the availability of these scholarships. Categories vary from each institution. They can include these. What we're counting here is everything from academic to athletic. It could be a music scholarship, a theater scholarship, student government. There's a wide variety of things that are counted in here. Most of them are funded through foundations or other specific donors that are donating money to a campus. The eligibility requirements, as you can imagine, there's a wide number of scholarships. They vary depending on, it could be academic issues, it could be requirements that are established by the donor specifically. So there's no one consistent format to these. It's just, it varies by institution and scholarship.
Tammy, an issue here that would be of interest to legislators, I think, would be the results of the challenge grants, particularly from the standpoint of the scholarships that led to. That would be a very valuable piece of information in terms of how the investment from the state is maturing into additional scholarships. I think it's a good direction, but it would be helpful to have that kind of data as we get nearer the session to demonstrate, I guess, how many additional people are being assisted.
And we do track, of course, the Challenge Grant Program, and that's a report we can put together for you. Okay. And we will.
Thank you.
And finally,
President Nessett.
Just in comment to that, I think I would defer also to our university and college presidents who have all spoken at Challenge Fund meetings. Representative Martinson's pretty familiar with some of the impacts that have been made to these schools and universities. Is just astounding. And I for one thank the legislature for putting that Challenge Fund in place. The specifics would be nice, but I know the commentary is really overwhelming, the good it has done.
So the last thing I wanted to report on is student debt issues, because once we're through all of this, there's still a lot of loans that are usually taken out by students. I refer you to the affordability report on page 10 if you want to see more detailed information on this. But really, to summarize it, The national average for debt when you're graduating from a public or nonprofit college is about $28,950. And that was for 2014. In North Dakota, the average is about $27,700. And so North Dakota students do graduate on average with less debt than their other students across the nation. In the last 5 years, and this would be on page 11, if the specifics are on page 11 in the report, but in the last 5 years, all of the institutions across all categories have seen a decrease in the number of the volume of loans that are taken out, the number of borrowers that are borrowing money, and then their average loan amount. So that number, it peaked in like 2008, 2009, because I think the award amounts, the eligibility for award levels, federal loans increased around that time. So there was a large increase. Now it seems like it's tapering back down a bit to a more manageable number. And then as far as default rate goes, because with any loans, sometimes there's people default on those loans. North Dakota, again, North Dakota students default at a rate lower than the rest of the nation. In 2012, the default rate was about 11.8. North Dakota institutions, that rate was about 9%, so lower than the average. And statewide, with all North Dakota institutions, it was about 6.6%. So if there are no other questions, I'm going to hand this off to Richard Rothfuss.
Senator Flacco.
Mr. Chairman, maybe just as a comment, she talked at length about scholarships. There may be some value in both having the board as well as this committee have a quick primer sometime on the constitutional amendment that's coming up for the people to vote on, because so we don't have people being caught flat-footed. And based upon body language, I'm guessing that makes sense because when we passed Senate Concurrent Resolution 4003 as it relates to the Foundation Aid Stabilization Fund, creating up to $200 million for scholarships, I think that's an important thing for the people in this room to fully understand, because they will be asked questions about that. It's because it's 4003 and then 2039. Not today.
I was just looking at you to continue with the discussion, but yeah, that's a good point. Good morning.
Morning. I'm Richard Rothfuss. I am Vice Chancellor for Academic and Student Affairs. I've been asked to make a brief presentation on our current student success measures. I've chosen to focus on retention rates, graduation rates, and also licensure pass rates, as these have been items of interest and concern in the past. The data in the slides is derived mostly from our dashboards. I just want to point out that we have our dashboards which key our metrics to our strategic plan up on our website. These are updated regularly so that anyone can look at them, and we do use them internally for discussion and decision-making. It's become a convenient place for us to go to check on things as well. The data I'm presenting is drawn primarily from the federal IPEDS data set. There are other data sets we use that have more subtle indicators embedded in them, but IPEDS is the national standard. It's the easiest to use for comparison to nationwide trends, so that's what I've used today. The first slide indicates our retention rate at our four-year research institutions. The red line at the top indicates the national average, more or less. I've simplified it for this slide, and it indicates that our research institutions have been at or slightly below national average for well over a decade. There's variation up and down, but it's pretty stable. I'd also like to point out The timeline on this, the bottom right-hand corner, this slide shows we only go to 2012. That's because we are dependent on the IPEDS data set to make the national comparison. So any recent changes, either up or down, won't be reflected in these data sets. Our four-year regional institutions show a different picture. They've been below the national average for over a decade, and they had some relatively significant low points from 2009 to 2011. They are, however, trending up slowly but consistently, and I've seen data sets, our data sets show that that trend is continuing since 2012, but I can't show a comparison to IPEDS for that. This is probably our most concerning data set of the slides I'm going to show you. But it's important to note that through legislative funding, we now have a tool to address this issue, the Predictive Analytical Reporting Tool, or PAR, which is in the process of being installed for all institutions. In fact, it's ahead of schedule as of yesterday when I checked, is going to allow us to look deeply into our data to both figure out what's the issue here, what is causing these retention rate issues, and also give us the mechanism to see what we could do to address them. I've been in the system for a year and a half now. I've been in higher ed for a very long time. When I look at these data sets, one of the things that concerns me is when we have a retention rate that's below the national average like that, is that we've held steady, which shows that there's no easy fix here. It's not someone had a bad idea or there was a budget crisis or a scandal. It shows that there's something much more complicated going on that feeds into these retention rates. Our 2 years have a very different picture. The 2 years cluster just above the national average. Some are below, some are above. Our 2-year institutions are probably the hardest to compare both to each other or nationally because they have significant variations in their missions, and they also have to react very quickly to changing workforce markets and development in the state. But as a cluster, they're above the national average on retention, and 3 in the past few years have been trending up, 2 have been trending down. So that's the status quo as I can derive it from the IPEDS data set on retention rates. Graduation rates, I've also pulled the data set from the IPEDS data set because we're looking at graduation. Of course, we have to wait for cohorts to proceed through the system. So this data set, it also does not reflect the most recent activity. It will be several years before we'll be able to graph that in this manner. One on the slide that is projected, there's 2 lines. The upper line, the blue line, is what we call the 150% rate. That is, if you are at a 4-year school, do you graduate within 6 years? The lower line is the 100% rate, or if you're at a 4-year school, do you graduate within 4 years? Nationally, right now, less than 35% of students at 4-year schools finish in 4 years. So in our internal discussions, when we look at this data set, we usually just look at the 150% rate because the 100% rate is such a small subsection of the students for us and also nationally that it doesn't serve us as well. So I've included the national average line for the 150% rate. If I included it for the 100% rate, and I don't know why I didn't, you'd see exactly the same thing. We run under the national average, but not all that much. It fluctuates up and down, but within 10%. This slide is the graduation rates for our research institutions, and there is a slow but steady trend up on those. For our four-year institutions, we have a slide that parallels the retention rate slide. The 4 years have, for over a decade, been below the national average, but again, you can see that they are trending up on at the 150% rate with the data set we have. The 2 years look completely different. The 2 years have been consistently above the national average for a decade now, and they bounce around a little bit up and down, but they tend to be consistently at that location.
Mr. Chairman.
Representative
If I
Delmore.
may. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you tell me why there's no data for us beyond 2007? That makes it rather irrelevant, I think, for what we're looking at today and the information that we need to move forward. This is very old data.
We are tied to the release of the IPEDS graduation data, and that simply has not been released up to this point. They're behind on releasing the data.
If I may, Mr.
Yes,
Chairman.
Representative Delmore,
Yes, that,
continue.
oh, thank you. Thank you. President Shirley has pointed out that the date represents the incoming cohort. So these are students who started in 2007 at the four-year institution, not who graduated in 2007. And I certainly should have made that clear, and I apologize.
And then, Mr. Chairman, are we doing a better job of tracking our students? You know, for a long time, and I had proof of it in Grand Forks, where I had many students that went to Red River where I taught. They went to UND for 2 years, they went to Minot State for 2 years, and then they transferred somewhere else. And so it was always counted against the institution, even though they may have gone to the University of Minnesota and graduated, gone out to Arizona and graduated, gone on to graduate schools. They were counted against the institutions. And I guess I just have never understood, you can track me on my GPS anywhere, but we can't track college kids and find out whether we're really doing a better job than our statistics sometimes show.
We do have other data sets that I think track the students better than iPads, and my understanding is we'll be presenting some of those at a later meeting. We like SAMS better because it does a better job of tracking those students who leave one institution and go to another. So in terms of comparing to national averages, with iPads, we all have the same faulty data set, so it comes out in the wash for a comparison. But in terms of analyzing our success rates, SAMS reflects that better. We also, the folks at the statewide longitudinal data set, working with that, are doing some really incredible stuff helping us find our students and where they're going. So while I can't answer the question yet, we're hoping that by the time legislative session starts, when someone asks, where do the students go, we'll actually have an answer for that instead of the, we don't know it, they're hard to track. So we're getting closer. And in fact, I think the next slide illustrates one of the data sets that we can use.
Board Member Morton and
Yeah,
and Senator Flacco.
Richard, I think you explained it very well. iPads is one data point, and Representative Delmore, what it does, it just compares all the schools, like Richard mentioned, those kids that graduated in 2007. Now, every state in the country has people that transfer. So we're not unique. We're not the only state in the union that has people get transferred or get married or stuff. So I think it is a legitimate data point, but it is not the only data point. The clearinghouse, and as you mentioned, there's other data points that we can point to. But obviously, there is room for improvement.
Senator Flacco.
Mr. Chairman, just to follow an earlier comment, I think the SAMS data is much better. And I know you presented during the 2015 session from the system office to the Senate Education Committee on it, and used a lot more of the SAMS data, because I think we make better decisions based upon the SAMS data. And I think when we talk that we have a university system that, and I'll just pick on whoever's the top here, Dickinson State, if a student transfers after 1 year from Dickinson State to Mayville State, I don't consider that a problem. I think that is part of the greatness of a university system. And to say that Dickinson State has failed, I think is wrong. So I think the SAMS data and some other data, plus we could get it more timely because we're making decisions. I mean, even you talk the cohort group 2007, I mean, that was, not to talk election, but that was like a president or so ago.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, I think, you know, to look at it in those terms, I think, you know, I'm guessing if I ask President Richmond to give me the data on matriculation from fall term to how many enrolled in spring term that we're in right now, he could provide that for me. And I think those are the kind of things that are very helpful for us to better understand changes that have been made. And then if I was, you know, a new president, I would want to have the data that reflects work I've been doing. You know, and I think that is just much more helpful in terms of evaluating. I know, you know, I mean, the iPads is a national thing and great, and I'm not holding it against you or anything. I mean, you kind of inherited some of this, but I just think it's so much more valuable and more timely if we aren't looking back so far, and we can respond much more nimbly.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, real quick, if you may.
Yes, Board Member Murphy.
I think the other element that is sort of lost in this is, I know at UND, we've had a tremendous increase in retention through the PAR analytics and using that data to create mechanisms to alter the course of a student's first year in a manner that we end up retaining them. You know, there's students leave for two reasons. It's not a good fit, they have a bad experience at the institution, or the other reason is academics. And so the PAR really works on the academic side to try to catch that. And there's, I think everybody's in discussion about programs to enhance the retention due to the first issue that's not academic, you know, students leaving for other reasons. And so that may help actually if we could get those kind of data to the legislative body here, because I think those are more reflective of what's actually going on. In UND, it's been a huge increase, and it's been sustainable, and it's slightly going up, and now we're above that 80% threshold, and over the last 2 or 3 years. So I think that's helps hopefully go state that I think at least at UND, I know we're moving in the right direction, but now that PAR is going to be used by the system, now it's out of that testing stage. Hopefully that will be have similar success across the other institutions within the system. Thank you.
Okay.
One additional data.
Senator Nelson has a comment.
Mr. Chairman, it seems to me that in some ways we're working against ourselves. We encourage kids to go to community colleges, ads on television, all sorts of things. Community colleges cost less. They get their basic classes, generals there, and then some of them transfer to the four-year colleges. But yet, they're never really enrolled in the four-year colleges, and they're counted against the two-year college, or the other colleges they went if they didn't get their certificate or some other type of thing. Is there a way within the system, I mean, to come up with a data say that they stayed within the system, not within the college?
Yes, and we do have those data sets, and the SAMS data set also can reflect that in a manner. So I think North Dakota has, if not the best general ed transfer in the nation, among the best in the nation, which means transfer between a Mayville and a Dickinson or a BSc and a UND is so seamless and so easy. Our students bounce around all the time. No way you could not do in other states because your credits wouldn't transfer for general education. So we don't reflect as well because we've made it so easy for our students to move around, just as you've indicated.
Okay, continue.
The slide on the screen right now is an interesting data set which came from the statewide longitudinal data system, which I put up there as just a brief indicator of our continuing attempts to address exactly some of the issues that have been brought up and some of the ways we're trying to look at the data in a more sophisticated manner. When we talk about student retention and graduation, that, of course, is talking about a real person who's spent real money, who may or may not repay a real loan, but there's also an impact on the economic development of the state. I don't think that we've had good tool sets in the past to sort of measure those complexities. This slide is the overall retention of students who graduate from an NDA-US institution in the state, which means they graduate from an NDA-US school. Do they stay in North Dakota, either to go to another school or to get a job or to do whatever? Just do they stay in the state? The longitudinal data system says that over 70% stay in the state once they graduate from one of our schools. In Minnesota, Montana, South Dakota, our neighbors, that number is half or less of the students will stay in state once they graduate. I won't presume to interpret that on the fly, but I think it indicates the rather unique situation North Dakota is in and how that makes interpreting retention and graduation rates a little bit trickier to figure out what the overall impact is for the state. For licensure, please ignore the slide that is in your handout. That was an old data set. I can sum up our licensure pass rates very simply. We have 150 programs in the system that are linked to licensure of some sort. Of those, 57% can be benchmarked to national average pass rates on the exams. A lot of exams, states do not share their pass rates, so we don't have anything to compare to. Of the 57 that we can compare our pass rates to national averages, there are only 2 of our programs that are below the national average. One is UND Mechanical Engineering, which for whatever reason had a pass rate of 73% the last time we collected the data. The national average was 83%. If 10 more students had passed, they would have been at the national average. That presumably is just a data blip. The other program that is below the national average was UND Law School, which got a fair amount of media attention. They were slightly below the national pass rate at 74% instead of 78%. If 5 more students had passed, they would have hit the national average. So on licensure, we're at or above national average consistently with 2, what I think are just data blips, which happen sometimes.
Board Member Milliker.
As I look through all of these data sets, 4-year colleges have grown into 6-year universities, and 2-year colleges have grown into 4-year, correct?
I'll respond by saying my views do not reflect those of the system or the chancellor, and then I could say yes.
So it would seem to me that if we are looking at affordability and we are looking at retention rates and we are looking at graduation rates, our effort, strong effort, should be to maybe attempt to get those down to 3 and 5 or 2 and 4.
That would certainly be one approach. And I think we've nationally and in the state gotten ourselves into quite a fix because we have encouraged everyone to go to college. We've opened the doors to everyone to go to college. And we've shifted the nature of what those colleges are and haven't quite caught up with all the mechanisms and supports that go along with that.
And I have heard, as we all have, stories of students borrowing $200,000, $250,000 to finish up a bachelor's degree. And as you look at the data that's been presented today, there's a reason why that has happened, either through the student overextending financially or the amount of years that it's taking them to get through the program. So it would seem to me that we need some improvement is certainly in our guidance and counseling and a real strong effort. I know private universities, especially the ones that are around here that I know about, have been stronger in that area, and that's one of their selling points. And that could be a real strong selling point for us as well.
Yes, and the easy fixes have all already been applied. The institutions diligently watch to make sure that the number of credit hours required can be completed within 2 years or 4 years. They track the other factors, course availability, gatekeeper courses that are stopping students from progressing. All of those we already pay attention to. We're looking at social issues, which are much more difficult to address.
Representative Striley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Richard, on that point, I mean, if the minimum to get financial aid is 12 times 2 times 4, you can't possibly graduate in 4 years. So unless you move that, the 12 number up, they're never going to graduate, assuming they all take 12, which they don't. I mean, most are taking more than that, but it's not possible to graduate in 4 years at the 12 credit hours.
That is correct, and I think the way some of the privates and others make sure that graduation timeline is met is they require the students to take that credit load. We certainly could look at tying any financial aid and assistance to that credit load, but there is, of course, a danger involved in that as well, because there are students who are willing, but the holdback is not willingness or financial, it's family situation, travel time, childcare, other issues. So.
And then has class scheduling been looked at recently as far as, is that appropriate? I mean, do we not have enough classroom utilization to allow them to do it? I mean, have we dug into that as far as the scheduling piece and trying to improve that?
I know the institutions watch that. We don't have a real mechanism at the system level to watch that yet, but PAR, once it's fully implemented, will be able to show us where in program progressions there might be class availability issues and scheduling. That's at the institutional level always a cycle because it's related to personnel and other issues.
And this question probably isn't for you, but I mean, where is the classroom utilization study that we asked for, I don't know, 3-4 years ago, 5 years ago maybe? Is that done, gonna be done soon? Because, I think we're underutilizing the classes. It's fairly obvious, I think, the spaces. And some of the teaching staff is not teaching enough credit hours. And then it all ties together, the scheduling, not teaching enough, not taking enough credits. I mean, if you solve some of these simple things, these numbers will correct themselves right where we want them to be.
I believe the facility study report is due in a couple of months, so that we probably will have that on our agenda for the June meeting.
Yes, the space utilization study is part of the master planning process that you were just describing, and we will start getting some of those reports here by the end of the month, but over the next couple of months we'll be finalizing all of those, so we will have that shortly.
Okay, folks, we're going to take another 5-minute break. We've got to distribute some materials for the presentations by Brady. We'll call the meeting back to order. The next piece we want to look at wasn't on the agenda. I missed it when we were putting the agenda together. You have a single sheet in front of you. It is an issue that, how should I word this? It's not exactly a legislator's favorite topic, but it does deal with the issue of affordability. And so you have a sheet in front of you that's part of a longer report. It's the tuition waiver information for the last year. And certainly tuition waiver can affect student affordability. I think when legislators look at this, 30 million, 31 million a year is a significant component of the appropriation, and or compared to the other tuition that is revenue that's being paid. So I'm not going to get into any detail on it. I just simply want to have it on the table as something that affects affordability, but at the same time, it who gets it is an issue. That's one of the questions. A lot of factors around this. Senator Flacco. Oh, okay. Any comments on this? Representative Striley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, and I've beaten this drum for a long time, but you know, the stuff in here and looking at this and another, actually, council's got a more detailed report too, they put out in December. I mean, some of these, in the grad assistance, you know, that it is what it is. We probably need to do that to be competitive. I don't dispute that, but some of these cultural diversity and institutional waivers and international the international waivers, just, I don't see why. I mean, if you look at this particular campus, 8.3 in 13-14, 8.3 million in international waivers. To local North Dakota kids, it was 3.8. So, I mean, we're waiving a lot of tuition for international students, but then not doing it for our own. And the retention rate on the international ones is not good. So why are we doing it? Just to fill the seats, to generate revenue? What is it? And I think the board needs to get rid of some of these cultural diversities, dramatically cut back on the international, or at least do the same for our own North Dakota kids. I mean, granted, we've got scholarships earmarked for them too, but it just seems like it's the wrong direction. If we're just simply trying to fill seats, fine, but that shouldn't be our mission.
Further comment?
I would just comment,
Board Member Morton.
if we make a drastic move as far as foreign nationals, companies like Microsoft will just quit growing here. Foreign nationals are very important. Diversity is very important to a company a global company like ours.
Mr. Chairman.
Board Member Murphy.
And as our colleague from the legislature illuminated, you know, the grad assistants, grad research assistants, grad teaching assistants are an essential part of being a high-tier research institution. And, you know, that ultimately is paying, you know, basically stipends, right? And so, like, our graduate students, they get a paycheck. And that paycheck then goes back into the community and form in lots of different forms, right? I mean, paying rent or buying vehicles and so forth, so on. But I think the important thing is when you look at these numbers is to separate out those in the graduate side, which, you know, frankly, is the cost of doing business if you're having two research institutions. we are very judicious and about how that's given out and so forth. But still, that's what drives our research program. That's what drives bringing federal dollars in for research grants. And so that's a very important component. And so I'd like everybody to realize that, because that's a very important part of this, and it's also nearly half of the dollars. Okay, and so when you think of tuition waivers, and you have to think of that graduate waivers, and what does that mean? It means something quite a bit different if you're a research institution. So that's the only comment.
Board Member Reichert.
Thank you. Just a comment on diversity generally. I think that one of the great experiences in college for most students is the people that they meet and the different, and you learn a lot from the people that you meet. And I think that having a diverse student body is critical to providing a quality experience. And I think we probably do have students who leave the state because a lot of our colleges, it's the people they grew up with, people they already know. They want a different experience. They want to learn something new. And I think that there's a lot to be said for having a diverse student body and bringing people, whether it's international, whether it's just even from other states. I think there's intrinsic value in having people of a variety of background in our colleges. I think it adds to the quality of the experience. And I would agree with Mr. Morton that from a recruiting standpoint, to the extent we are able to retain some of these students, we've, in the state and sponsor them and bring them into our communities. I think it adds a lot to our workforce, but also our communities. So.
President Nessett.
I agree with everything what's been said here, but I'd like to go back to Representative Striley's comments. I think it's not so much as that we're trying to minimize our diversity or work pool or graduate school, but it's how much do we finance that as opposed to how we help our North Dakota students. So I think that's really where the discussion is, because I think we all want the diversity. We just spent a couple of days, on a UND presidential search that is just going along fabulous. And Nick, that was one of our big topics, diversity of candidates. So I think it's really how much do we assist and fund these individuals, not so much that we want to exclude them.
Mr. Chairman, that's exactly my point. Exactly, I couldn't agree more. But wherever you do, someone else is paying for it. I mean, it's just that simple. The cost, so another kid is essentially paying for that in increased costs to go to school. So the amount, I just think the amount is way out of whack where it should be. And if you base that, look at what the actual general fund appropriations are, in tuition and kind of compare them all, I mean, it's a significant number. So I don't know if there's a board policy that needs to change or what needs to, but it definitely needs to be looked at. It's a lot of money.
Senator Flacco.
Mr. Chairman, I guess one of the things I would like to see is the reverse report of this and look at how many extra dollars, as an example, the international students are paying over and above the flat rate of 100. I mean, if we discount it from 267% as an example down to 200%, I mean, I don't know, is that a bad thing? Question has to be asked. Versus, some that we may discount less if they're Minnesota or South Dakota or something like that. So I would like to see the flip of this in terms of the data and see how that comes out.
Senator Flacco, I believe that's part of the report that this page came out of.
Yeah.
That there is in that report information relative to the funding that was expended by individual students or estimates of that.
Because if we're just putting a number up there of, well, here's the, we probably get very few at 267 or whatever it is, and is that the right number as we move forward? Certainly if we want to be really pragmatic about this and say this is only about business, this is not about people, which it is, if you were to go in and just be ruthless, my term, not anybody else's, and say, well, how much does it cost per employee upon graduation? whether they're in-state, out-of-state, or international. So you have a retention rate of, say, 75% for in-state students. We've provided them with 13 years K-12 plus X number of years for their graduate or undergraduate degree, versus, say, if you have a retention rate of 37% for a Minnesota student, and we pay for that bachelor's or associate degree. I mean, if you look at it from that standpoint, it's a very different story. We certainly want to keep as many North Dakotans in the state as possible, but let's not throw out the other option and say that there is no sense behind it, because even in working with the North Dakota Trade Office and others, there's people from commodity groups that I've been talking with lately. I used to chair the Ag Committee. When we go to other countries, those are oftentimes our door openers. Those are oftentimes the captains of business, so to speak, that we have meetings with in order to sell them our pinto beans, our tractors, our skid steer loaders and stuff. So we must not discount that either, I think. So that's important. Whether we retain them always, we won't. I mean, and we also know that sometimes kids from North Dakota, a Fargo kid may want to go to Minneapolis, a Minneapolis kid may want to go to Chicago, a Chicago kid may want to go to New York, and the New York kid may want to go to Paris for the first 5 years. But our goal is to keep as many as possible in this area, and then maybe after 5 years, when they're looking for a place to settle down, that they think of this, because there are, thousands, 20,000 or 16,000 job openings that are really, in many cases, very good jobs, such as Don Morton talked about earlier, too. So I think that's some important considerations as we move forward and look at the entire package in terms of meeting our desired goal of really having a trained workforce. When you look at the data from the Lumina Foundation, North Dakota is about 50% of our people have an associate degree or higher. The Lumina Foundation report says that approximately 70% of all jobs in the year 2018 will require an associate degree or higher. We have a long ways to go to get there, and it's not going to be very easy to get there. So we really do need to really push as hard, whether it's bringing people back that have been out of the that are in the workforce, much like we've talked about with the, whether it's the Bucket program or other programs, to look to shore up their academic talents so they have more opportunities, so we give them that passport to a better life and to better jobs. And whether it's programs with the Native Americans, whether they're the program we set up for place-bound people that where we provide for non-beneficiary people going to a reservation campus or others, those all play into it, and we may not get them all the time, and we would love to get them. Everyone would love to have their child stay in the state upon graduation, or at least I think most people would. But we also want them to experience other things. When you talk about, I spent a lot of time in college, but I can't, and I told a student group this earlier, I mean, someone who's become a friend of mine, I can't imagine my life as an example having not met Prakash Matthew, one of the best people in the entire world. Prakash doesn't come from Forbes, North Dakota. He came over here, got a degree, and he stayed here. And my life is much richer because of him and other people.
Representative Beadle. Representative Beadle. Board Member Meliker.
And we had 11 proposals that came through that were looking for federal funding for funding their various research projects. And I think close to 50% of them were international students, or international PIs, which are the ones that were running the research. And so these are people that have come here, that are teaching here, that are doing research here. And we approved, I believe, almost every one of their projects because their projects were very solid. And so they offered a perspective, and they offered a lot of input. And as I've been on that committee over the last year or so, year and a half, that amount has stayed about the same. It has been 50% of, maybe not, sometimes a little bit more than that. So they really have offered a lot of not only diversity, but opportunities that maybe we in North Dakota have not looked at. So I'm very much in favor of continuing the diversity programs and targeting our research departments especially.
Board Member Reichert.
Mr. Chairman, I would have a question, and I don't know, I think in response to Ms. Nessett's comments and Representative Straley's, I think maybe we all maybe have agreement on, diversity is good, but the question you've asked is, I think, how much does it take to attract these students? I mean, is it, is the amount correct? And I don't know if we have any data on that. I don't know how we would find that out. What is competitive to get the number of students that we would like?
Board Member Hacker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And maybe this is a question for Representative Straley, who brought the issue up initially. Is it about amount, as Carrie's talking about, or is it about where it's being spent? If you can help us understand the public policy concerns that I think is what you're asking about. Is it dollars, or is it how they're being spent?
Well, it's just a fairness issue. I mean, why does one person deserve something over another? I mean, you're picking winners and losers is what you're doing when you waive anything. And the retention rate of at least the data I've seen isn't that great. I've spoke to some graduate classes at Minot State and won't pick on them, but I mean, it was a great group of people. Very few of them were going to stay from the various countries. It was, I can't remember how many countries, 5 or 6 different countries in that one class. They were getting a good education here at a cheap price. They said it was way cheaper to do it here, and then they were going home. So yes, we're keeping, whatever the number is, 20, 25%, 30, 40, whatever percent it is. But someone is paying for that in increased costs. I mean, it's that simple. So it's a little bit of everything, the dollar amount, the amount of students, 22% in this one here are getting some form of waiver. So if it's right for one person, it should be right for everybody. Let's start waiving it for everybody then, or reduce the tuition and make everybody pay their fair share.
Representative Hoverson.
Mr. Chairman, I think when we're looking at the numbers that are here, though, and maybe this isn't possible, but to get a glimpse from each university of what one of these waivers might look like as examples, the cultural diversity tuition waiver, because that was picked on, that covers 1 year of tuition. It doesn't cover room and board, it doesn't cover fees, books. So it's really a small amount of money for those students, but makes a big difference for the students that they're targeting. As Senator Nelson pointed out to me, for example, the institutional waiver includes athletic waivers. Do we ask how many of our student athletes stay in North Dakota before we consider giving them a waiver? It's about more than this. I mean, this is such a big picture question to say, well, we're going to pick on 1 or 2 of these waivers and just look at cutting them because we don't recognize the value. And to echo Ms. Reichert's comments, the value of bringing such a diverse student body to our institutions is intangible. You can't speak to that and put it in numbers. But I think to get a better example of what some of these are, if you look at NDSU versus UND, there's nearly twice as many waivers offered under the institutional column, but the cost is about the same. So is, getting a better picture of what exactly that looks like, who we're offering the waivers to, if it's 1 year, if it's 4 years. And again, we can't look at the full scope, but maybe getting a few examples, a few student stories of what this impact really is before we just say, cut it across the board. Thank you.
Board Member Morton.
I think Representative Straley raises a good point. It is a complicated issue, and what really complicates it for a company like Microsoft is a very dysfunctional immigration system at the federal level. So many of these students want to stay, but we just don't have enough H-1B visas. We don't have enough. It's just a very dysfunctional system. And if you look at all the statistics around immigration, and we're an immigrant nation, when it comes to patents, when it comes to startups, our foreign nationals lead the way in our country. And so, but we've got a much broader issue that we can't resolve here. It's just a dysfunctional immigration system at the federal level.
Mr. Chancellor.
Yes, sir. Just to let people know, we do have the tuition study that John Richmond is leading to basically gather information on tuition policy, but also a couple weeks ago, based on some feedback from just the group, we've added waivers to that as well, just to try to fill out this chart maybe a little more detail. So obviously this is an issue that's complex and have different viewpoints, but we do have a process. We're working through that. And it may be one of those topics on the 23rd of May, we're talking about envisioning the future of where our policies stand. So we have a mechanism to incorporate that even beyond today.
Okay, thank you. Well, I told a couple of people that the first item would not be a quiet one, and so didn't disappoint me, and thank you very much for the it's healthy to have the discussion, and I appreciate it very much, and we'll see what the Chancellor has to offer with the report to flesh this out later on for both groups. So let's proceed on the agenda to Brady Larson will take us through a couple of reports relative to comparing revenues historically, tuition, state operations, state facilities that have been available to higher ed. So, Brady.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Madam President, and others. I'll go through the other document that was recently distributed to each of your spots, and it is a memorandum regarding historical tuition rates at university system institutions, as well as state funding for those institutions. And because we are a little behind schedule, I'll quickly go through each of the items in this memorandum, but please feel free to stop me if you have any questions on any of the schedules. First of all, looking at page 1 of the memorandum, there's a chart and schedule detailing tuition rates at each university system institution since 2000. You can see at the chart how those rates have increased. And then down below that is a schedule detailing the specific rates for each of the institutions. I will point out that these are undergraduate rates and they are based on an annual amount. Moving on to the next page, on page 2, this chart and schedule details the percentage increase in tuition rates for each academic year since the 2001-02 academic year. And you can see starting out in the early to mid-2000s, there were significant increases in tuition rates at each of the institutions. And then those have slowly gone down, and you'll note that even towards the end of the 2000s and into the 2010s, there were several two-year institutions that had no tuition rate increases. Moving on to page number 3, there's information regarding the average tuition rate increase by institution type. And you'll see a chart there, and below that is information regarding what each of those rate increases equate to in actual dollar amounts. I know in the past there have been some comments at committee meetings that we always look at the percentage increase, but this schedule also details what the actual dollar amount of that increase is as well. And moving on to page 4, this schedule details state operations funding for each of the university system institutions. And so this chart details the actual funding only for operations for each institution. And so this would primarily be general fund appropriations for each institution. There were some unique instances where there was some funding appropriated from the Student Loan Trust Fund for operations at a few institutions, and that's also included. But it's primarily ongoing general fund appropriations and special one-time items. And moving on to page 5 is the detail to that chart. It goes through each of the campuses and details out the specific operations appropriations for each institution. And that's followed up on page 6 by facilities funding for each institution. And this highlights the amount of state appropriations for major capital projects and regular repairs at each institution since the 2001-03 biennium. And this would exclude any locally funded projects at campuses such as dormitories or dining facilities. This would only be the state-funded capital projects. And I will note that it does include general fund appropriations as well as projects that were funded through state bonding authority. On page 7 is the detail to that chart on page 6. And the last schedule and chart on page 8 is a comparison of operations funding to tuition rate increases. So you'll see a line going across the chart that represents the operations funding for institutions in total, and then each of the bars on that chart represent the tuition rate increases by institution type. So you can see in the early to mid-2000s, the operations funding was fairly level, and that correlated to higher tuition rate increases. And then going forward into more recent times, the tuition rate increases have been less as the operations funding has increased. So, Mr. Chairman and Madam President, that's my quick overview of this memo, and I can stand for any questions.
Any questions for Brady? The purpose of this was just simply to get a history of tuition and appropriations in one place, and you'd have access to what happened institution by institution, what happened with the state, and it includes the facilities, and so this is a lot of the information that relates. Yeah.
Very good.
So, Brady, do we have the next one? I think the next one will also help summarize that. So what, this report is just taken from four different time frames from the SHEO data. So we, the handout that Brady just alluded to, if you were going to summarize that, you would probably say that in the early 2000s to the end of the 2000s, the tuition rates were increasing significantly. One of the reasons for that was the appropriations rate was not increasing that significantly. As you look at what's happened since 9, you start to see that the appropriations commitment has increased significantly, double digits and beyond, and the tuition rate has leveled off. Some of that is agreements between the board and the legislative for a biennium. And so you've been able to control the tuition, better as the appropriation has come up. And this last handout, the SHEO one, I think the best way to illustrate it is just to look at the pages from 2 on. So if you just look at back there, you can see where North Dakota's tuition revenue was in '99, and where North Dakota's appropriation revenue was, and where North Dakota was nationally. That's pretty far down the page. Then you look at the next, go down 5 years more, and you can see that tuitions, as we suggested, were going up. Appropriations was still lagging. We did increase a little bit. Probably fair to say most of that came about because of the effort of students in the tuition area. So then if you go to the next page, and you get up to 2009, and this is kind of the end of the era of significant tuition increases. They started to level off here with, I think, one exception probably after that. But North Dakota has climbed to significant tuition levels. The appropriation is not up that much. And North Dakota, however, again, benefiting from the tuition increases, has increased out of the 49th slot up to lower third, so to speak. And then you look at 2014, and you can see what's happened in the last few years. How the tuition rate has actually gone down in comparison to the national average. The appropriation rate is amongst the finest in the country, and the overall revenue sources, operational revenue sources for higher ed in our state, we now are at 12th in the country. So it gives you the history of the sources. It also gives you the reality of where we are today, which is probably pretty close to where we want to be. We're doing a pretty good job of providing revenues for higher ed, and it's balanced out a little bit more to where the tuition isn't, we're not as reliant on the tuition as we used to be. So I thought this was provided a kind of a brief history of where we've been, where we're at, and it definitely gives us a jump-off point from where we'll try to go, given the news of the last week and the challenges that we have going forward. Senator Flacco.
Mr. Chairman, quick question. Does the education appropriations include like merit-based, needs-based scholarships of the like of that? Or is it more so the kind of the campus appropriations?
It's the campus appropriation. Okay. So yeah, you're right. The appropriation for could be a little bit more with the scholarships and so on that would go there. Further comments on that? If not, then that kind of summarizes our information, so to speak. And there's a couple pieces that I would like to move into then and share with you, probably discuss with you as well. Brady, do you have the, we'll go through the, a long time ago we brought Madeline Hunter to North Dakota to work with teachers on being efficient and effective, and she was the guru. I mean, this is a lady that John Wooden went over to and took classes from her so he'd be a better coach because she taught you how to organize your instructional material. And the first thing she said was, have your material passed out before you start the lesson. So this is, forgive me, Madeline. Fortunate to have her, and she was a great model for us in North Dakota to use a number of years ago. I'll wait till this gets around. So this is a personnel report. I want to use this as a lead-in. One of the things this committee has been charged with is a study of administrative costs in higher ed. And we've been told, and it certainly is true, that getting your arms around this kind of data is challenging, nationally, locally, whatever. But it is a significant part of the budget, and when you look at expenditures, from my perspective, there's a question, there's no question that they're legal. The question is, are they effective, are they efficient, are they appropriate? And we don't know. So that was one of the drivers behind this, the request to have a administrative study done. We were going to do this kind of together. It gets real clunky when you try and do it with 36 people representing from every one of the institutions and so on. So our approach is going to be that we would have Brady work with information that we have available in the higher ed office and involve institutions if there are questions that we need for clarification. So that's kind of the way we're going to try and tackle this now. That's just informational. But I thought that if you got a chance to look at this, this is the information that legislators worked with this last session. And I hope you will see that it's important to have better detail in this. Because as you look at this, everybody on this table is going to have their own interpretation of what this means. And we really don't know. We do not have the detail that we need. This is the best information we have. So there are some things that are affecting higher ed just because we don't know, but we're making guesses. Whether they're valid or not, I don't know. So take a look at I start with the table on page 2, the student enrollment table. And essentially, when you go through this time frame, the students' numbers have increased about 3,000. And then I go back to the first table, and in that same time frame, personnel has, in the total column, has increased by 1,200. So my 10,000-foot level assumption, you all I think are making the same assumption that we would do legislatively. And that's pretty rich. 3,000 students, 1,200 employees. I hope the ratio wasn't that rich for the first 36,000 students or whatever the number was. So that's what legislators have to work with, that kind of data. You can do it for each of the institutions. You can see that some have gone up significantly, some have actually gone down. The enrollment may have gone up, and enrollment may have gone down, and in some instances, personnel's gone down. In some instances, personnel hasn't gone down, may have gone up. So you can do it on an institution by institution basis, but the purpose of this is just simply to say, we really have a need for much better data than this. And so I'm hoping that the board would join us in saying, we got to get this fixed so that we really have accurate stuff. So it's a way of saying, kind of expanding it beyond an administrative study. Yes, that's important. We want to know what that data is, but we really want to know what's happened with all of the personnel, and I would think that that would be valuable data for the board. So that's just kind of information. If there's comments on it, I would appreciate those as well. President Nisset.
Representative Sanford, I think this is an excellent starting point. I mean, we need to know what created these numbers, and it's a great place to start looking. So I think we, as a board, Mr. Chancellor, will delve into this further and see if by May we can come up with some supporting information that may answer the question and see where improvements can be made. Where can we have efficiencies that are needed with our tougher economic times right now. It's our responsibility.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Representative Sanford.
Board Member
Just
Morgan.
pile on what Kathy said, data-driven decisions making is the coming thing. We have the data available. We have big data. We have the ability to analyze data better than we ever have. And data-driven decisions can lead to much better and more consistent and effective decisions. So congratulations for getting this started for us.
Thank you. Board Member Steven.
Thank you for compiling this information. I think it's important for us moving forward to, it's always a little bit risky to compare just where we were in the past. I think it'd probably be good to have some comparable data from whether it's South Dakota, Montana, their research institutions, their four-year degree granting institutions, the two-year colleges. Comparing ourselves to where we were is sometimes dangerous. It doesn't mean that it's not accurate, but I think it's good to have some comparable numbers similar to what we did, whether it's tuition, whatever it might be. And secondary education has, I know it's a shock in this day and age that we'd have increased regulation with anything, but it's certainly leaks into secondary education, and that requires some additional cost, whether we like it or not. But I think it would be good to also make sure that we're comparing to other people besides just where we were a few years ago and in the past 10 years.
Good point. And as I preface my comments, getting the data on a national basis it's not unique to North Dakota. This is the kind of stuff that isn't really theirs. President Mason did guide me to the Delta study, and that has been informative, and it provides, that's a national look at it in significant enough detail and a rationale behind it. So I'd urge you to take a look at that if you want. It's easy reading and it's good information. Senator Nelson.
Could somebody please define non-broadband and broadband employees?
I told
The very
Brady.
first chart talks about full-time faculty, part-time faculty, and then it goes into this 4 columns of broadband things, and then they've got temporary instructional and temporary non-instructional. So what are these broadband people?
Brady.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Madam President, and others. The term broadband and non-broadband comes into play in Board Policy 606.1, and that policy does provide that all employees of the university system are considered part of the broadband or regular employee system, except specifically excluded employees such as presidents, vice presidents, deans, provosts, coaches, and other specialty-type positions.
So all administrations included there?
Mr. Chairman, Madam President, and others, it would include, the non-broadbanded would include the presidents, provosts, vice presidents, as well as other employees designated as non-broadband by an institution president, so it could vary by institution.
Senator Flackel.
Mr. Chairman and Brady, help me better understand how, in terms of FTE, we're not talking non-duplicated headcount, so we're talking FTE of at least 12 credits, equivalent to FTE? First question.
Mr. Chairman, Madam President, others, are you referring to the FTE students?
Mm-hmm, correct.
That would follow the traditional IPEDS reporting requirements where an undergraduate student would be taking the equivalent of 15 credit hours, and then for a graduate student, it would be 12 credit hours, and then for a professional student, they have some different definitions for those types of students.
So 3 5-credit students make up one student? Question mark?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Chairman and Brady, next question. How are adjuncts and like graduate students on teaching stipends handled in the data here? Because we know nationally, and I'm guessing within the state of North Dakota, there's more plugging spots with some adjuncts. How are they handled in terms of the reporting here?
Senator Flacco, I don't have the exact answer for that. We did pull this information from university system reports, so it is based on their definitions and where they place those types of positions. So I can go back and get that information for you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I think we've gone through a lot of data. And we appreciate all of the folks who presented for us today. Are there comments or discussion items or issues anybody wants to bring up at this point in time? Board Member Ness.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to thank you for pulling this group together. It's extremely valuable for our board members, and I think the legislators also, and I hope this will continue for many years in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. President Nisset.
I'd like to thank you as well. I think this is time well spent. A lot of information here that we will take back and work on the board level. And I will also let you know that we've, as a board, made an effort to invite legislators in each of the areas where we meet to join our board's session. Senator Flacco has done that. Senator Wardner has joined us. And we really appreciate the input and the shared vision and just being able to communicate with one another. I think it helps facilitate the work that we do as a board, chancellor, university system office. So thank you very much. And that invitation will continue to be extended to invite legislators to begin our public comment at our regular meetings. So thank you for today.
Yes.
It's wonderful.
Thank you very much. Other comments? If not, thank you to everybody. And oh yeah, now we have public comment. I'm very forgetful about that. I'm consistently forgetful about this particular portion of the agenda. Before we end, we have an opportunity for public comment.
Red is on. Thank you. Chairman Sanford, Chair Nesset, members of the committee, members of the board. For the record, my name is Rodney Howe. I'm from Hettinger, North Dakota. I'm a bit of an old cowboy and out of my element, out of my arena, but I appreciate the chance to talk to you as a taxpayer and maybe offer a different perspective, a different comment on prevailing theories in print and so on. Some people make a living out of tearing things down. Some politicians make a career out of tearing things down. They're not building. And as I watch the headlines, I watch the energy and the created drama, I speak to you as a taxpayer. My words are my own. But I offer a different perspective other than the energies being devoted to what I see as small things. And to the point, I know it's time to adjourn, but one example of many, controversies do little good for anyone. They usually tear down. There's been recent headlines about a $5,000 expense. Much hoopla, much the world is falling, the sky is falling, it's terrible, it's terrible, it's terrible. So I come today about how I want my tax money spent, and even my friends within the system may disagree with me, but I want you just to hear another side of all the negativity and so on. So we have a $5,000 expense, and to me, the controversy, any controversy hurts everyone, and I don't understand, and for the board, why can't there be a phone call? Why can't there be a sit down? I'm concerned about this action. I disagree with this action, whatever. So here's what we're going to do going forward. We're going to find a different funding source. We're going to file ADA requirements or what have you. That part isn't so important to me. It's about the headlines and the inflammatory statements, and that does nobody any good. I just don't. If it's about who's in charge here, make the phone call. If you noticed, there wasn't any pushback. There wasn't any pushback. If we make big deals out of little things, how about the other people on staff, and how about the other administrations? Have you got their back? I just don't understand that. And we talk about the North Dakota way, and we talk about the North Dakota culture. Okay, I'm as poor as anybody. We carried our drinking water in from an outside pump. We hauled our bath water in from town. So what? It doesn't matter. I, as a taxpayer, want my guy to get off a 20-hour flight, and I want him to have his A game, him or her, have their A game, and I want them to hit the ground running. Now, my friends might disagree with me, but that's my perspective. But balancing this with, Dr. Dean Brashani came into his job with a bag full of leftover bills, 8 million, 10 million, 12 million, I'm not exactly sure. And we're talking about 5,000, and it's a big deal. There wasn't a lot of headlines about $8 million, $10 million. There wasn't a lot of hoopla and jumping up and down about this. And what I know of him, that's not his style. He's not a cheerleader type. But please, can't we respect the bigger things and not get so caught up in the smaller things? So, and just as an aside, along with this particular issue, there's others, but I think we're wasting our energies. But when we refer to isolationism, there's always a hint of bigotry in that. Aren't we bigger than that? Isn't the state need more than that? Don't we as a people need more than that? So at the end of the day, and to the media, please consider whether it's a simple truth, whether it's important, or if it's McCarthyism. Let's sort this out and let's focus on what's important. And for all of us, if you hear the same thing over and over and over, pretty soon you start to believe it. Pretty soon it's true. It has nothing to do with the facts or the grain of truth to it if you hear it over and over and over. And I would ask, and once we buy into it, and my friends do too, it's hard to unswallow the Kool-Aid. It's hard to unhook the hook of the negativity. So I would just ask as we go forward, not to make the controversies. They're unnecessary, I believe. There's $5 million problems, there's $10 million problems. Let's make headlines on what we're devoting our energies to doing then, and let's work for the benefit of the students. If we want to be vicious and vindictive, I don't think we're going to progress much. So a cowboy has come 350 miles, gave a rough talk, but I'm very sincere about the importance of where we put our energies. The arrogance needs to be parked, and I would respectfully, with all due respect, ask that we forward on resolution and then moving forward. So, thank you.
Thank you very much for appearing today and for making the trip. Appreciate that. Further comment?
Mr. Chair, Madam President, and members of the State Board of Higher Education and members of the Interim Legislative Council. I didn't have the notes until I just got here. I thought I need to speak up because I've been getting calls because I was part of this team that accompanied President Brashani. So I thought I need to say a few words. I had the distinct pleasure to accompany President Bersani and Dr. Shetty during our 10-day trip to India and Malaysia. We visited 20 institutions in 8-day period. 20 institutions. I've been part of North Dakota for 45 years. I came here in 1971. I served this university 38 years. All good. Wonderful people. I had the pleasure to work in this institution. Thank you for your service as well. And I have never, ever experienced anything like what I have experienced in this trip as to the productivity and how we were received by the people of these institutions. I'm going to give you 2 examples of the places that we visited. I also had an opportunity to watch up close and personal Dr. Bersani in action. I worked for him, but at the same time, this was an opportunity for me to watch him in action. We visited some of the top universities in India and Malaysia. 2 of those I want to identify. Manipal University. This is the alma mater of the CEO of the Microsoft, and that's where he graduated from. They embraced us. The other universities are going after Manipal University. They embrace, in fact, the red carpet treatment that we received was unreal. National Institute of Engineering. These are all very, very credible institutions. I'm talking about 20 of these institutions that we visited in 8 days. And I didn't even know, when I looked at the schedule, I didn't even know how we were going to make it. I know our goals were this: to advance NDSU in research, teaching, outreach, and collaboration with international institutions. Number 2, to advance NDSU and the state of North Dakota on a wider international map. Those were the 2 broader goals that we wanted to accomplish. I tell you that we are going to reap the rewards of this, not just NDSU, the state of North Dakota, going to reap the rewards of this for years to come, years to come. Just 1 word or 2 about this whole travel. President Bersani has a vision, and he took it to the next level. He traveled on business class. That is where the controversy is all about. And years ago, if you travel abroad and in the plane, most of you know that, it was called the first class, right? And very few airlines are first class anymore. It's called the business class. There is a reason as to why they call business class. And there are people who can afford, they will travel business class, and also the people who are working. And I'm retired now. I wasn't a coach. I didn't need to work. I was killing my time. It was very painful. It was painful to 25 hours sitting there. I was miserable. But at the same time, I didn't need to work. This man, he's a workaholic. This man was working just like any other business people there. When we had 10 minutes, when we landed in Bangalore, when we had 10 minutes, he was trying to find a Wi-Fi so he can communicate and do his work. And so the time that he spent was unreal. And I will end with, I've been thinking a great deal about this, and I thought, how do we, all the criticism being there. There's a wonderful theologian, Norman Vincent Peale, and when crisis comes like this, I think he used to analyze in 3 ways. There are 3 points that he always used to, and there's a litmus test. And he says, number 1 point, you want to take a look to see as to what is right and what is wrong. Any issues, identify what is right and what is wrong. In this particular situation, I strongly believe that the President Bersani, and before he even left, it is the right thing to do. So he looked at that and said it was right. The second is it legal or is it illegal? I want to believe that I also Chancellor has identified earlier. There was nothing that no policy has broken. So it was no policy has been, so it was legal. Then there's a third principle, which is the gut part of it. Are we doing the right thing for the right reason? What happens when something appears in the newspaper? Can you live with that? That's a perception issue. That's a perception issue. That is what the whole debate is all about. When we are reading this headline, we are saying, oh, what happened here? Did we misuse the money? Well, what is happening is, I'm here to tell you, everything that we did here, President Bashani has done, is he did everything for the right reason. So thank you for taking the time to listen. I appreciate your time. Thank you for your service as well.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else wish to comment? If not, again, thank you, board members, President Nesset, committee members, and the meeting is adjourned. I'm guessing yours just continues, eh?
Legally, this is where I defer to our legal team. How do we recess? Okay, board is recessed for lunch. We'll reconvene at 1 o'clock. Thank you.
Yeah.